Good evening and welcome everybody to Spaced Out Radio. Tonight we got one hell of a panel for you as we close out the month that was on Spaced Out Radio here. And we have a fantastic set of beautiful faces here to join us tonight on the Roundtable as we close out the month. Before we bring them in, you know, we always got to do our little bit of a round scoop here because we got to say hello to everyone. That is for sure. We're going to start off with Race Fan in the gold medal position. SJ takes home the silver. And I don't know who took home the bronze tonight. I can't see it. I think it was, it was Gorgeous Steph Dickey. Cat Chaser, thank you so much for kicking off the Super Chat tonight. Really do appreciate that. Hi, Andrew. How you doing? Hey, Ross. Jenny Metz, the gorgeous one. How are you? Lazarus, thank you for coming on in. Really appreciate it. Jay Fox Hunter and Mama Susan, nice to see you. Space Cow and Luscious Jewels, good to see you guys. And as we scroll on down here, we have, let's see, Paul Holland's here, everyone. He'll be signing autographs after the show. Sign up to the left of the studio if you don't mind. Line up to the left of the studio. Uncle Dale and his Power Stash will be signing autographs as well after the show. Line up to the right of the studio. Remember, if you're in Austin, Texas, and you see Uncle Dale rub his Power Stash for exactly 21 days of good luck. Hi, Linda Thompson. Good to see you. Nikki, nice to have you back. Thank you for joining us. Commonwealth Andrew, good morning to you. Sith Lord, nice to have you here, my friend. Lazarus again, thank you for joining us. Oumuamua, what's new? How you doing? Still flying through by Neptune there? Let us know and give us an update if you don't mind. We'd appreciate it. Travis DeLuca, good to have you back, my friend. Thank you for joining us. Typical Watch, good to see you. Lynn Wallington's here, everybody. Lynn effing Wallington in our chat room. There she is. Lord Ludacris, welcome to our chat room for the first time. Thank you for joining us. Hi, Big Rob. Nice to have you here. As we scroll on down, Stakes on a UFO. Good to see you here, my friend. Thank you for joining us. And Bigfoot Michigan Rob has arrived. Give him a wave. He'll always wave back. Stewpot, good to see you. And Excalipurful, thank you for coming on in. And let's see, who else we got? Millennium Ufologist. Welcome, guys. Thank you for joining us. And La Fortune, welcome to Spaced Out Radio's chat room. Digger Dog, good to see you. Major Lee, thanks for coming on in. Hey, Gabe, gorgeous. Jessica McCreary is here, everyone. There she is. Give a bow there, Jessica. We would love that if you did. Dave Hurley's here. Dave effing Hurley. There he is. Yep, we like him. Mr. Apnea, good to see that you're awake. $5,900. Nice to have you here. The gorgeous and talented Jordan Ashley Pettit has arrived. And there's our team right there. Look how good they look. Look at the hats. Look at that. Tom, you and I are naked. Naked.
I know. And there's a little bit of a reflection there.
Oh, I know. It's just, I'm so disappointed in myself right now. All right. Thank you, Justin Ruoko. All right, for the super chat. Really do appreciate that, Justin. Thank you. And what are you laughing at there, Science Bob?
We look so beautiful.
You guys are beautiful. You are beautiful. Christina Aguilera sung it. Words can't bring you down, Bob. They can't bring you down. And,
not even gonna think about it.
Oh, why not? Why not? There's Justin in there. Jeff Perry. Sing us a song, Oh Sherry, if you don't mind. And let's see. Beelzebrad, welcome to Spaced Out Radio's chat room. Christopher Morales, thank you for coming on in. Hi, Kevin. Nice to have you here. The gorgeous Jenster from Twitter. How are you, Jenster? And hi, Sensational Sherry. What's happening? Ross Lambda, nice to have you here. Dave effing Hurley once again with an awesome super chat right there. Right there. Thank you, Dave. We appreciate it, man. Matrix, welcome to our chat room. Alex Blanco, thank you for coming on in to our chat room. We really appreciate it. If this is your first time here, just so you know, we are a live radio show. Double Tim, good to see you. And we do take commercial breaks every 30 minutes here. So but you guys get to see the behind the scenes stuff as we do the show. And we're always live right through. But we will be taking commercial breaks every half an hour. We appreciate each and every one of you coming on in tonight. We're going to get going here in about 35 seconds. Mennonite Abe is here, everyone. Mennonite Abe. Awesome Andy Svensson. Herman A., good to see you. Double Tim, nice to have you here. Hi, Todd Purden. Dirty Filth, good to see you guys here. Manitoba Becky, you're looking gorgeous tonight. Thank you for coming on in. And I know I'm missing some. John Doe, the Fapster, good to have you here. We're going to run out of time here. John Poe, nice to see you. And sweet Donnie D, nice to have you here. And 10 seconds, guys. We're going to rock and roll here. We're going to have some fun and break down the month that was. Sit back, relax, because here we go. From the mountains of central British Columbia to you listening around the world, this, my friends, is Spaced Out Radio. I am your host, Dave Scott, sitting in the captain's chair of SOR headquarters. We welcome you to tonight's show on our terrestrial affiliates around North America, digitally on TalkStream Live, Revolution Radio, and KPNL. All of our archives are free by going to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do me the favor, hit that subscribe button. You can follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including rocking out to Bumblefoot and reading up on Captain Shirk's SOR Newswire. Tonight's show is brought to you by Chive Charities. Help make the world 10% happier by visiting Chive Charities today. You can find them on our website. Now, at the end of each month, we bring in a super panel of super guests to come in for the SOR Round Table. It's where we discuss the month that was in the weird, strange, paranormal, and supernatural. And tonight we have one heck of a great team in front of us. We have Lynn Wallington from The Weekend Show. From MUFON, we have Tom Whitmore. From P3 Productions and our YouTube channel, we have Gary Spikes Jr. And Gary, I know we've been gaining listeners and subscribers left, right, and center on our YouTube channel lately. Man, you got to slow down in the work you are doing, my friend, because if you don't, people are going to be out there thinking that we are actually buying subscribers, man. I don't want that.
Well, why do you think I'm staying poor? I've got to pay somebody to get me.
Well, we appreciate you. John
Hudson.
Hudson.
What freaking moron would say that?
You never know. There might be people out there. Who knows?
You don't have to search that hard.
Well, if you could do me a favor and just email me their contact info, I'd love to get in contact with them. I've got some work if they need it.
Lou Jimenez from... I'll tell you, Lou, you have kind of stormed onto the scene. We really appreciate you from the unclassified. I apologize. I always get your. Oh man, I'm having a brain fart here.
What?
Your show?
Yeah.
The unclassified celebrity review.
The unidentified celebrity.
Unidentified. I apologize.
Yeah, no worries. No worries.
I'm so glad you're here, man, because we wanted to talk with you in a long time, and you are the brain master behind the Big Phone Home and Big Phone Home 2, which is coming up. I do want to get into that tonight as well, if you don't mind. And from our brand new feature that we have on Spaced Out Radio called the Unbiased UFO Report, we have John Hudson as well. Everybody, welcome to the show. Really appreciate that. We're going to start off with UFOs right off the bat here, because overall, July has been a pretty quiet month when it comes to UFOs and the news surrounding it. We're looking for scraps. There are scraps out there, but really that big news really hasn't come, because Lou Elizondo's been kind of quiet. Sean Cahill has been kind of quiet. Chris Mellon has been kind of quiet. Science Bob, we're going to start with you on this one. Why do you think everybody seemed to take July off?
Because Congress took July off. Lots of people in government take July off. There's just not much going on. We did have Jeremy Corbell bring on Chad and have a fantastic interview, and we heard new stuff, and some of it controversial. So that was important.
Lou, what's your thoughts?
I mean, that's a great point. I mean, it's summertime. Lawmakers and things like that are usually out of town. But, I mean, we did see some really great suggestions and directions from, say, like a Chris Mellon. I mean, he blogs all the time, and he's always giving, he just had a diatribe on suggestions for Congress, and it was awesome. So there's little things like that are happening that I think are really important, that are going on behind the scenes, that maybe aren't as sensational and sexy as a piece of a craft or something like that. But I think they're really important, because that means the conversation is still happening somewhere on a congressional or state level.
Well, we definitely want to see it happening. John Hudson, the newest member of the Spaced Out Radio team, want to just kind of get your thoughts on it, because you're the guy digging up all this UFO news for us.
Well, I mean, the one thing I will say is I think as the noise drops down from all the major stories, what you get is a lower level of signal noise, where now all these other stories are popping up. And the cool thing is we're at a phase right now where who's reporting the story, when they're reporting the story, is sometimes almost as important, if not more important, than the actual story they're presenting. And so, you get to have these kind of two-level conversations about, Vice did this, and this was the content of the article, and it was interesting. And then someone else is like, yeah, but it was Vice, and look who wrote it, and why did it come out now? And so you do, as you kind of lower that signal noise, you do get kind of an uptick from all the other areas, which to a lot of people are more important because they're localized and they mean more to that group.
Very true, very true. Tom, for you guys in MUFON, has it been a slow month?
Yeah, it's been a slow month, but I think things are heating up on the controversial side with this, with these allegations against Travis Walton, and I think that's not going to go away anytime soon. I think there is some movement going on behind the scenes there.
Very much so. So let's get right into Travis Walton then. And Lynn, let's start off with you, because this is a story where Travis Walton, you know Travis personally, and this is someone who has literally talked about his alien abduction. We all know it as Fire in the Sky, the movie, and then the story behind Travis Walton's 5 days where he was taken on a spacecraft while his brother-in-law and his co-workers up in the forest were all charged with murder and everything that goes along those lines. I think everybody pretty much knows the story. Give us the background of a little bit of the story and what your thoughts are on this new drama that's going on.
Well, my understanding of it is that Travis used to be married to Mike Rogers' sister. Yes, thank you. His sister. And they divorced quite a while back, I believe. I don't think it was anything recent. And for some reason, I think it has something to do with the newest documentary. And there's an issue with money, that Mike isn't getting the money that he thought he should be getting. Now, all of a sudden, he's coming out and saying, after 40 years or whatever it's been, that they all made it up. I mean, I kind of find that hard to believe. Like, one, automatically, if somebody is saying things like this when money is involved, I automatically will question it, regardless of who they are. Just because money is a huge motivator for people to lie about stuff. And two, they've all taken multiple lie detector tests, and they've all passed multiple times. So I find it difficult to believe that every single one of those guys was able to pass a lie detector.
Multiple times.
Yeah, exactly.
So for you, Gary, when you look in on the Travis Walton incident, and the fact that they are now everybody's trying to brand Travis Walton as a liar and somebody who's lied for the last 45 years. What's your thoughts on that?
That is actually one of the subjects in the UFO community that I've kind of kept in touch with. The biggest thing, I think, is not just Travis Walton. I know they're singling him out and hammering him, but I like how Lynn said it and Bob said it, where multiple people over a period of 40 years passed multiple tests, did hypnotherapy, regressive therapy. All of their stories stayed consistent all the way through for this amount of years. I honestly think they're just singling him out because he is in the limelight right now. I honestly think that they might pass if they don't get nothing with him, they might try to pass the ball on to the others and try to start singling them out. It's just a par for the course in the community.
Very much.
Well,
the
one thing I would add really quick is that Travis was on a show the other day, and he was talking about the fact that it's at least his opinion at this point that the other individual involved, whose name escapes me at the moment, might have been pulling some puppet strings to specifically rile Mike Rogers up to essentially intentionally cause a conflict.
Ryan Gordon.
Yeah, thank you. And so, I mean, he was telling him some ridiculous things. I mean, just really just insane things that would make Travis look far more egotistical than he is. Put Mike in a bad spot much more than he could ever be. And so, and most of that stuff made no sense to be telling Rogers unless you were trying to rile him up. And so there could be, you know, and if you've listened to some of the interviews that have gone on, you know, that guy's very polished. He's very articulate. He's you know, you can tell that the way he talks. He's not you know, just off the cuff and so forth. And so I think there's a lot more going on here than it could be. But the other thing I'll add just really quick is that you know, let's face it. You know, in this world, sometimes a little bit of negative press isn't as bad for someone as it probably should be in you know, compared to your personal life, right? And you know, as long as Travis maintains his character and maintains his story and maintains this kind of you know, very trusty personality that he has, you know, I think he could come out of this, you know, as going through another trial that he survives.
Yeah, the thing that bothers me most about a lot of what I'm hearing is the story's 45 years old, and Travis is not a spring chicken. So if he gets a detail different here and there, and the overall major part of the story doesn't change, that we've gotten everything we're ever going to get out of that story. There's nothing else to be learned. Leave those family feuders alone, and let's go find something that's interesting.
Yes.
That and Ryan, I don't know what Ryan Gordon's motivations are, but he apparently wants to make the faking of Fire in the Sky movie or documentary is what was reported on other places. That certainly seems to be what was claimed, not directly but inferentially, in the Jimmy Church interview with Travis. So I know Richard Dolan well, as many of you know, who is who I'm the admin and moderator for the Richard Dolan Forum, and Richard talks constantly about having spent hours and hours and hours with Travis, traveled across the state of Pennsylvania with him over a day or two, and just spent so much time with him, and he just doesn't believe any of this stuff about Travis. Chris Bledsoe and I have talked extensively about Travis, and they have spent hours and hours and hours talking to each other on the phone. So two people I know and like don't think Travis is capable of this kind of machinations. That's number one. And I've taken 30-something polygraphs in my life. 30-something times I've been polygraphed. I was basically polygraphed every few months for about 10 years when I was really active. Okay, so active and doing stuff for the government. Okay, so naturally as a mathematician, I studied the polygraph. And if you look at the known probabilities of false alarms, false positives, and false negatives, the probability of 6 people passing that lie detector multiple times on a crazy story is astronomically small. It's microscopic. You need an electron microscope to see that probability. It's BS.
Tom Whitmore, let's bring you in. Travis Walton versus Mike Rogers. Do you think that this is everything that got stirred up a few months ago when Mike Rogers all of a sudden kind of went off the deep end on social media and started stating that he was no longer going to be considered a witness to the Travis Walton affair?
Well, it's interesting after 45 years, you know, that no one has come out and tried to claim that this is a hoax. I mean, when the event first occurred, there was a lot of suspicion that it was a hoax, and certain people like Phil Klass, you know, claimed such. But after 45 years, you have to wonder, you know, what's going on there. And Mike Rogers has admitted himself that there is a monetary dispute between him and Travis. Mm-hmm. The thing I don't understand is that the naysayers are claiming that they saw the Gentry Tower, that this Gentry Tower, this lookout tower, this lighted room on top of a 70 feet high was mistaken for a UFO. But I'm confused about how they would hoax that. Did they accidentally see that and then get the idea to turn it into a hoax?
I'm telling you what people should do. They should go to Google Earth and go to the place we know in Sitgreaves Forest where the thing is supposed to occur, and then go where the fire tower is. It ain't happening. There's no line of sight.
Right.
Not only that, but just like as far as Travis goes, Travis never wanted any of this. He never wanted to be in the limelight. You know, it happened to him. He had a million people coming to him, trying to talk to him, having interviews with him, but he does not like being in the limelight. He really doesn't. He's a very introverted guy. So why would he make this stuff up? There's no reason for him to do so. It's not like he's made a ton of money off of it.
And add to how he was found and the fact that he was actually missing for several days. I mean, I doubt many people, especially at that age, for a male to show up naked in a very uncomfortable situation in a very remote area. I mean, you'd have a hard time getting someone to do that over a bed.
Let's get Lou in here right now. Lou, let's get your comments on Travis Walton.
Well, I always love playing devil's advocate. I love doing that. I don't really rely too much on the lie detector tests. They're 45-year-old lie detector tests. I think there are better ways that we could do it now. I would love to see an AI of some kind maybe break down their stories and see if they're consistent and if they're lying or not. That would be kind of cool. Maybe that could straighten some stuff out. I do rely, though, on the search for Travis Walton and the testimony of the sheriff that talked to those guys right after the event happened, and he didn't think that they were lying, even after the testimony. So those are the things that I find very interesting, and also just something to speak to Travis's validity is that no one else has come out. No other person has come out to back up what Mike is saying. So until they do, I'm gonna just reserve judgment on which way I'm going to lean, but I love this story of Travis Walton. I think it's one of the best recorded stories ever. But it's 45 years old. It's tough to nail things down right now. It's trying to catch smoke. So, I don't, does it change the UFO Twitterverse or world? I don't think so either way. But yeah, I guess those are my thoughts.
Well,
we had a lame July, and we needed to stir stuff up so people could have shows.
Yeah,
true enough. Ivy in the chat room though brings up a good point, and this is what she says. She says Ryan also brought up other evidence like a light tower in the abduction area that could be mistaken for a UFO, and Travis Walton's mom calling off the search party. Can anybody address this? Who would like to go first?
I don't know anything about Travis's mom calling off the search party. I've never heard that, but I don't really trust anything Ryan says because he recorded all his phone calls. To me, he's preemptively planning all of this for publicity. So I really don't trust anything that Ryan says.
I find it hard to believe. Go ahead.
I was saying, my understanding was that there was some report that at one point Travis's mom said something to the effect of, I don't see much value in doing the search at this point. I don't think he's around anymore, almost implying that, he might have not survived it or some point. And so that might have been something that was exaggerated at some level. And then the light tower that she's talking about was exactly what we were just talking about a couple minutes ago.
It's not line of sight.
It's not line of sight. And actually, if I remember correctly, what I thought Travis said on Fade to Black was that it wasn't even in the right direction. My understanding was that it wasn't in the right location for that. And I mean, come on. I mean, we've all seen. I don't know. It was well said. It's been a long time and so forth. But to answer the questions, I think that was the source of the rumor about the mom calling it off. And I think the lights that this tower we're talking about was the tower we were just mentioning a minute ago.
I will say this though, his abduction story does not fit the ordinary abduction pattern, and the business of the UFO firing a beam at him. I mean, that sounds like science fiction, like out of the War of the Worlds. And I've always had a problem with that, even though I'm not saying he's created a hoax.
Well, they didn't fire it directly at him. They were trying to leave, is his understanding of it now that he's had time to process it, and he happened to get in the way.
Well, yeah, I mean that's a good point, and it's actually to me it's almost adds a little bit of credibility to it, because it was not an abduction. It was not a planned. I mean, if assuming that you believe in all this stuff, basically they were not coming to get him. They were there for a different reason, at least according to Travis. And he basically stepped into something, got injured, and they basically picked him up to fix him because they felt bad that they damaged him. So it was a much different pretense and a much different usage of that encounter than you saw in other cases where there's genetic material removed or there's there's a pattern of abduction over a lifetime of an individual. This was a kind of a one-off. So I mean, Tom, in a way, like what you just said actually kind of matches what Travis describes.
How many of you guys, as we got about 2.5 minutes, believe that Mike Rogers is the one who stirred this up? Because Mike has always been the secondary figure of it all, and there might be some jealousy there because Travis is the guy getting the conferences. Travis is the guy getting the interviews. Travis is the guy who they want to talk to about movies and documentaries. Anybody?
Well, he sure took his sweet time.
Ryan stirred all this up for publicity.
Yep, 100%.
Yeah, and if you hear Mike Rogers talk now, he's not animated. He's not really upset. He doesn't have the huge passion to he's very kind of mellow and almost like he would really rather not be having the conversation in the first place.
And the story's 45 years old. There's nothing we have to gain from it. It's time to move on.
Lou, you wanted to comment.
I was just saying, I mean, he took his sweet time if he's getting angry now. I mean, it's 45 years. Just like, it's cool. I mean, now, okay, all right, you want to get mad now? Okay. Like it seems a little, the timing's a little off. But, again, like I think there are ways, especially as computers advance, we'll be able to really sort of be able to tell, okay, which one can we follow? Which one can we trust? Which one can we lead to? Which one should we really devote our time and energy into talking about?
Gary, do you think that 45 years later that the Travis Walton abduction still matters, or should we be working on other stories?
I honestly think that we need to take a proactive look at it and compare it with newer reports, just like y'all was saying, because it doesn't fit the pattern. But one thing I wanted to say on what John was saying, even if you follow the story a little bit, even when it happened, Travis was the more flamboyant of the group. Roger was kind of laid back. The personalities are consistent all the way through this. So you have to keep that in the fact that even now he might be upset, but he's not pushing it. I agree that it's Ryan pushing it out of proportion just to get a clickbait.
Well, clickbait or not, it's a story that is going to continue right through as the debate continues whether or not Travis Walton is credible and his story is real. I'm sure we can thank Hollywood for putting a lot of fallacy in the whole situation because of the way that they didn't describe the movie A Fire in the Sky to the real incident that happened. But that's what Hollywood does sometimes. We got John Hudson. We got Bob McGwier, Lou Jimenez, Lynn Wallington, Gary Spikes Jr., and the legendary Big Bad Tom Whitmore here for the Roundtable. Coming up next, Avi Loeb. Is he seeing aliens in the sky? Let's find out on Spaced Out Radio next. That's a good start, guys. Good start.
Yeah, it was fine.
Yeah, it's fun.
These shows go so quickly.
30
minutes in.
Whether you agree with the person or not, this $3 kit, Charlie Weiser did. There's a fair amount of information on that website, and I don't know if you all have seen it, but it's worth looking at.
Yeah, I would say the one thing that I have thought about for some years is this recorded radio show where it is clear that it's Travis's voice calling into that radio show. I don't think that has ever been adequately explained, and it's before the abduction.
And what did he say?
Something about UFOs and stuff. I mean, I'm not going to try to give you the words now because I don't want to get them wrong, but it's findable on the internet.
Well, and he did have a passion or at least an interest in UFOs before it happened.
Travis Walton did?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's part of the reason he stepped into the light and actually advanced.
Yeah, exactly. No, exactly.
No, but if you talk to him, he's just like, I don't know why I got out of that truck. That was pretty stupid on my part.
And the one thing that mitigates against it being part of some kind of hoax is it's Phil Klass that discovered it.
He had a way of doing that.
Yeah, exactly.
That's
well, he offered bounties. Somebody called in for the bounty.
And you know what? That almost brings me up. I'll bring up the topic too tonight about Seth Shostak. Now joining the Galileo project. Like, did we really need this? Did we really need this to happen for the? You know, Seth could have a UFO land right in front of him, and he'll still say it's a 67. Chevy or something like that.
This was his exit opportunity. This was his chance to essentially pivot and recover his historical image, because I think after the report came out, he realized that he might have been on the wrong side.
Mm.
Yes.
Well, I want to tell you, you should go on the internet and find this panel, the science panel, where Jill Tarter and Avi Loeb are both on this panel. And Jill, who founded SETI, with Barney Oliver, she tore Avi Loeb a brand new anus. It was rough. And Seth Shostak works for her. So I just don't know how all of that's going to look. I have a long history with SETI. I worked on it. I was at the dedication.
Let's save that for the show, Bob. Save that for the show. So I want to get that to our radio crowd.
Sure.
And you know what? Just a good confirmation from Steam Train Mark, who lives in the future in Australia. We are all alive tomorrow. We are all alive tomorrow. We made it another day.
That's good news.
That's great. We made it another day.
Awesome.
I want to be a space-time crystal.
Oh yeah.
Oh, wasn't that a cool article?
Yeah.
I wonder if Google really pulled that off.
Yeah, they did.
You really think so?
Yeah. Yeah, Frank Wilczek is the person that dreamed it up, and Google put it on their quantum computer and made it happen.
Boy.
So wait. What is this now? I totally
Go Google time crystal.
Okay.
And after you've read that, say, Wikipedia article and some other things, we'll talk about it. But it's not shallow. It's as deep as the Mariana Trench to get there. I took a ton of quantum field theory before I could understand it.
Beauty.
I don't think I have a chance then.
Oh, well, no, we can put high-level explanations together after you've gotten familiarized with what it's about.
Okay.
Well, I put an article out on Twitter that does a good synopsis of it, a good kind of layman's look at it. Good. And then it points to the Quantra article that goes to a much deeper dive for folks like Bob and I and others.
Yeah, Frank Wilczek's paper's impenetrable to those without math.
Yeah. Hey, John, can you turn your microphone up just a hair if you don't mind?
Well, here, let me see if I can get a little closer to it as well. So that might help. I don't know if I got a volume on it, but hopefully that's better.
That is.
Yeah.
I think I'm going to stick with tracking Bigfoot. Y'all are way above my league here.
I got to tell you what, I'd love to know all the things Missing 411, our main man, has seen dealing with Bigfoot. A lot of people don't even know all of his Bigfoot history.
I know. And I'm so sick of people talking bad about him.
Screw them.
Impeccable law enforcement career.
Yeah, no, not only that, he's an impeccable researcher.
Oh, God. All right, guys, we have 15 seconds. A big thank you to Andrew, Tim, Filth, Kevin, Gabe, Dave, Justin, and Kat for the amazing super chats. We really appreciate the support. Thank you to all veterans who are listening to this show. We love you. Here we go, the second half hour. Second half hour of Spaced Out Radio is underway. My name is Dave Scott. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. We really do appreciate earning your listening ears. We want to say hello to everyone and remind you that if you have missed portions of this show or others, check out our free archives by going to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Just do me the favor, hit that subscribe button. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including rocking out to Bumblefoot and reading up on Captain Shirk's SOR Newswire. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show. We continue on with the SOR Roundtable tonight. We got one heck of a great panel as we got Lou Jimenez, Science Bob McGwier, John Hudson, Gary Spikes Jr., Tom Whitmore, and our great weekend host, Lynn Wallington. Everyone, welcome back. We're going to get right into Avi Loeb here, the Harvard astrophysicist and astronomer who is looking into whether or not Oumuamua has been a UFO craft or debris that has come from elsewhere. And, you know, he finally got on with Lynn. We finally got him on this show. And Lynn, what was that experience like talking with Avi?
Oh my gosh, it was amazing. I was totally just like fangirling with Avi Loeb. It was great. He's awesome. He was fantastic. Like, I have nothing but good things to say about Avi. And the fact that he was talking, so this new project that he has, the Galileo project, which is just fascinating. And I'm so happy to hear that he's starting this up. So he's not only like talking about Oumuamua possibly being made from from an alien civilization, but he's also wanting to set up sensors around the world, if he can, to look at UAPs and try to get a more concrete idea of what they are. So I think that's fantastic.
For you, when you had the chance to talk to him, what did you get from him? Because when I heard the interview and we came on as a panel afterwards, the one thing that I noticed about him was it felt really comforting and refreshing to have someone with that educational background to make all us UFO people feel like we aren't actually nuts.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that felt good.
Yeah, and that's the great thing about Avi is that he exemplifies, like Science Bob, he exemplifies what science should be. He's open-minded. He's not closing his mind off to any of the options simply because it seems too far-fetched. You know, so Avi basically is looking at it very logically and saying, you know, these were the options. It was an asteroid, it was a comet, it was something else. And he's just like, I just followed the logic. I followed the facts. And, you know, what we found, it wasn't a comet. It wasn't an asteroid. The only thing left, and the way that it, you know, propelled itself from the solar energy and all of the different factors which he discussed, you know, he was just like, it had to be something very thin. It had to be something very wide. And, you know, the other thing that's left is that it was made from an alien civilization. Like, I can't argue with that. So I think that's great that he's open-minded. And that was one of the things we talked about was why is the scientific community so shut off to this particular notion when that seems to be the biggest question that they have, you know, is there life out there? Are we the only ones in the universe? And Avi seems to be, you know, the only one at the time that was saying, aside from Science Bob, of course, that was saying, yes, there's a possibility. And yes, maybe this is an example of it. Just awesome.
Well, I'd like to add that I don't think he was hanging his hat specifically on Oumuamua. The way he talks, the way he phrases it, he considers that important. But if data comes out that shows that Oumuamua was something else, I don't think that's going to change his posture for what he's doing now. I think a lot of what he's doing is based on all the other data that's coming out and his desire to find out more about it for the open-minded curiosity you just mentioned, Lynn.
Oh, absolutely. And he basically said, too, why are we sitting here waiting for the politicians to figure out what this is? They're not scientists. They don't understand what it is. And they're not going to give us the information. So we need to take it upon ourselves to look for it. And he's absolutely right.
Absolutely. Lou, your thoughts?
Well, I also spoke to Avi Loeb and Paul Davies from the Galileo Project. And what I'm sensing is that they are going to look at this in the most scientific ways possible. Number one. Number two, we have to set our expectations. They only have $1.75 million to do this the right way. They're going to need somewhere in the range of $75 to $100 million to really do it right. Now, the instruments that he's talking about buying are fairly cheap, except for when it comes to the camera systems and the hardware to record these images. But I found it interesting that there are a lot of different takes on what they think this UAP phenomena is. For example, Paul Davies thinks it could be something like a ball lightning, an atmospheric condition, something like that, which I know bums a lot of people out. That's not what they want to hear whatsoever. And I totally understand that. But then you talk to Avi Loeb, and Avi's like, yes, this could be an extraterrestrial civilization. It could be, interdimensional. It could be ultra-terrestrial. There's so many different options. We have to keep our minds open, but we also have to follow the data and see where it goes. With that said, they're not going to be looking at any historical data. They're not going to be going back in the history books to look at any other cases. They're starting from scratch and going forward when it comes to collecting data. So I'm excited for it. And I know there are a lot of people that are nervous with other people like Shostak coming into the picture. I would say don't be too nervous. Avi's the head of it, and he's the guy raising the money. It's good to have as many differing smart minds as you can in the room, because you don't want to have an echo chamber. You want people to bounce ideas off of and make sure that you're going in the right direction. And that's what's comforting. But man, they've got a very, very, very long way to go.
Interesting. Tom Whitmore, let's bring you in here. Avi Loeb looking for UFOs. The Galileo project comes up. Is this what's necessary to push this through to the next level of scientific research into life out in the stars?
Well, it's definitely a step in the right direction. The thing that intrigues me when I'm looking at their list of priorities, one of them is the possibility of extraterrestrial satellites orbiting the Earth, if I read this correctly. And I'm thinking, why would you be looking for that? Don't the United States intelligence agencies have the capability of detecting that? It seems like a duplication to me. I'm not criticizing him for wanting to do it. It makes perfectly good sense to me, and I'm fascinated with the prospect of him looking for UAPs and other extraterrestrial objects. I've never heard scientists talking about miscellaneous extraterrestrial objects moving through the solar system, other than, say, comets, but they normally have orbits anyway. But this Oumuamua thing seemed to just kind of come through, and I think he's making a very good point that we should be looking for things like that.
Definitely. Science Bob, I want to ask you, what is the big difference between what Avi Loeb is doing and collecting scientists from around the world for this great new project and what the SCU is doing?
Well, the SCU is looking at basically any and all science and or engineering considerations around UAPs, what might propel them, what we doing analysis of videos and photos. And Avi has a specific task: find anomalous things and put a bunch of sensors on it. So his bias in setting this up is finding things like Oumuamua. And a lot of people don't know that Avi's been kind of on the Oumuamua path for a long time before Oumuamua showed up. Avi wrote a paper, and it was one of his, big papers, but it was a paper where he derived a probability of an object like Oumuamua showing up at random in our solar system. And it was vanishingly small. And so the thing that got him all fired up about Oumuamua is he had already computed this probability and went, wait a minute, this is so low a probability. This has got to be something weird. So he kept looking at it, and finally it just wouldn't let him go. And he thought of an explanation for the light curves, for the accelerations and other things, and he came up with engineered light sail. And so that's one thing. I want to point out that in the last 2 weeks, a paper came out, said, we think Oumuamua was a nitrogen comet. And the nitrogen being boiled off and expelled would have accelerated it. Now, I have not looked at the data or their conclusions or how they got it. I don't know what nitrogen boiling off a satellite, subliming into a gas, would look like in sunlight, because it will have an absorption spectrum. It'll have a line spectrum. So I just don't know what it will look like. So I'm just telling you that paper is there, but I have not done the necessary background to say everybody ought to run go look at, because they've messed up Avi's story. But people should know that that paper's there. People are continuing to look. Avi so these meter telescopes, I got to tell you, they can look up in the sky and see spacecraft. I have a half a meter telescope, and I can look up in the sky and I can image the space station. I can see all the solar panels. I can see all the little the spacecraft attached to the International Space Station. So they can see a lot of spacecraft in orbit, and the United States government and all of its allies and its opponents, they all have these telescopes that look up and look for spacecraft. And Tom's right. They can find things that are anomalous, and they do all the time. And the thing that pisses Chris Mellon off is they never tell us about it.
Mm-hmm.
That's the issue. Avi's group, should they be successful, will not be beholden to classification.
But it adds credibility to the field when now we're going to see a lot more scientists, big name scientists from big name universities coming out and supporting this project, something that they have been remiss to do up until this date, because not many scientists want to put their jobs or their tenure or their future grants.
Yeah, okay.
on
So,
the
but
line
again,
regarding UFOs.
again, I want to point out the problem. Scientists don't work for free as in air. They can't work for free as in air. They have to have a funded research project to be interested. And so Avi probably will be able to find a way to get a funding line for looking at this from all the hoopla around UAP. I think that's what he's actually after, is finding a funding line in the UAP budget in the next fiscal year.
Now, Lee brings up a good point in the chat room, Gary, that, any major findings will likely be classified. How do we hope or put the pressure on Avi Loeb to make sure that this is for the public?
It can't be classified. They don't have a skiff. They don't have clearances. They don't have any security structure. It's nothing to do with security. Just let me end it before you go any further, because it's not there. They don't have a security system. Just forget it. It's open.
Yeah, it's an open source study. They're not hiding anything. Anybody can get to the information. So that's that. Obvious stress. That's one of the biggest differences between the Galileo project and a lot of other things that are going on is and that's exactly why they are not also reliant on government information. They're not going to be taking anything out of a congressional report. They're not going to be taking any stories. None of those things will be included into their research. And that is because they do not want to be beholden to the government when it comes to releasing data.
Yeah, but
I mean, just to add to that, he specifically talked about the fact that the reason why they needed so much money is they want to build their own devices, because in a lot of cases, the reason why the government won't release information isn't because what was filmed was classified. It's because the devices it was recorded on are sensitive devices. And think about the money it would cost to clean up that information to release it. Who would even pay for that, right? I mean, who would even fund that within the DoD to clean up space data so you could actually release it to the public? So by them building their own gear,
no scientist, none, not one scientist wants data that somebody else is effed with.
Yes,
never.
Right.
But gentlemen and lady, I will say this, and Gary, I'm going to give you a chance to speak here for a quick second. Okay, we heard the same thing from the To the Stars Academy when they came out, that they were going to be for the public. All the news was going to be for the public, and they were going to release everything to the public. Tom DeLonge stood on that stage at a pressless press conference and stated, we're here for the public. We're going to give the public UFO information. Gosh darn it, I am bringing disclosure.
There's a
And
big
everything
difference,
went-
though, right?
And then WikiLeaks.
Yeah, Gary, your thoughts. Turn your mic on, but you're muted.
Honestly, y'all are way out of my league here, but I'm gonna say one thing. Being, kind of like Bob, I worked with the government, United States Department of Defense, Army. But my big point here is, I'm honestly at the point now with Avi Lowe and what they're doing now that the government is not even going to try. That's the reason. I'm just a simple redneck's theory. The whole disclosure thing is they know now that they cannot control everything. There's so much going on in space and so many eyes opened up now and watching that they're going to have to cover what they can when they can. Not very long ago, we did the panel show on the disclosure thing. I honestly believe that they're trying to do this as what we used to call a juke and a jive, to save what they have, but to save face and say, yes, we knew they was here, but what's next?
Mm-hmm. And can I point out too that Tom DeLonge is no Avi Loeb. There's no comparison between the two.
Oh, he's P.T. Barnum and a huckster, and Avi Loeb's a scientist.
Yeah. But they did have Hal Puthoff, and they did have Christopher Mellon and Lou Elizondo, but they also had a drawing of a spaceship that they were going to develop. So that's,
but
that's
also
a little
remember,
different.
No, you're right. But also remember that the whole premise of To the Stars Academy was that they were going to raise a significant amount of money, like in the 50 million to 100 million range, from their stock offering. And that was going to fund all these projects that they wanted to do. The stock offering only ended up bringing in maybe 2 million. That, as soon as that happened, I mean, the instant the stock offering didn't work out, essentially, I was expecting Steve Justice to just walk away, because that was going to fund his entire purpose for being there. So as soon as that failed, then they started going out and looking for money from the government. And that's what caused then that data to get locked down, because now they were beholden to the people who were given the money. So a lot of what shot them in the foot was that they based their entire funding on that stock offering, and they didn't have a plan B.
I got a question, though, about all this with Avi Lowe and everybody looking at the skies. Do we have a such thing as a satellite registry?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. NORAD publishes the orbital elements from which you can put a program on your phone and see every satellite in orbit except for the classified ones.
Okay. I was wondering about that, because if we do start having people looking up, they would need, because just like Starlink, how many satellites have they put up in the past 2 years?
I take my grandkids and my wife and I, we go outside and look at Starlink spacecraft every night coming over using this app.
They're pretty.
Cool.
I feel ripped off. I still haven't seen Starlink yet.
I haven't.
There are amateur satellite trackers, people that track satellites, and some of them track classified satellites.
Yeah.
And there have even been instances where DoD had to change the satellite's position or orbit because they knew that certain citizens were observing them.
Yep.
And that's been going on for a long time.
A long time. So people can Google that I wrote a satellite tracking program in the 1980s, and it went everywhere. It funded an amateur satellite building program, and NORAD bought a copy of the source code so they could use it. I mean, this stuff has been going on forever.
Very true. Very true. All right. But here's an interesting part about Avi Loeb. Okay, as we got about 4 minutes to go, and we could carry this over to the next hour if you guys want. It was announced today that Seth Stoshak from the SETI Institute, who has been one of the biggest proponents against seeing any type of UFOs for the last number of years, has all of a sudden joined the Galileo Project to find what? Nothing again? I mean, Seth hasn't been the biggest friend to ufology, even though he has allegedly been looking for UFOs and ETs flying around in sports models the entire time. So here we go. Is it a good move, John, for Seth Stoshak to all of a sudden join the Galileo Project?
It's good for him. It's probably good for SETI. I mean, let's face it. I mean, they were looking for something for decades, and a rock star drank their milkshake, right? I mean, that was not a good position for them to be in. But the problem, the challenge with Seth is, so I've actually talked to Seth about this all personally. SETI's headquarters is very close to where I live. I used to go to a lot of SETI events. There actually a lot of them were held over at SRI, which is kind of a fun place to visit. And I ended up running into well, no, actually, I'm sure that's not fair. I stalked him. I stalked him out of the auditorium and met him outside because I wanted to get him one-on-one. This was about 6 months, maybe. This was in 2018, and I asked him point blank. I said, "Have you seen the Navy videos?" And he said, "Oh, yeah, no, they're no big deal." And I'm like, "Well, no, but have you actually seen them?" And he said, "Well, no, but I have people that did, and they watched them, and they told me that they were no big deal." And we had this 5-minute dialogue about the fact that he was so far removed from the process and wasn't actually looking at this himself, and he just trusted what his people were telling him. And so you have a situation where I think in the beginning Seth was misinformed by the people that worked for him. He didn't look at the data himself. Then he had to keep backing up his story, and I think he's been looking for an exit strategy this whole time. And I think this was an out for him to essentially get on the right side of the ball court.
Could very well be. Could very well be. Who would like to respond to that?
I mean, yeah, I'll say I don't agree with Seth, but he is the head of SETI, and SETI is the biggest game on the block right now. So, if adding him attracts more philanthropists and money, great. Awesome. I'll take it. If that's more money for Avi Load's project, great. Just as long as he's not calling the shots and the spokesperson for this project, I'm good with it.
I think he'll be one of many science advisors.
Yeah.
He is a well-known astronomer. He is
he's got a value.
He wrote one of the best astronomy textbooks there are.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you know what? What about Neil deGrasse Tyson? Where's he through all of this?
Yeah.
He's a showman and a guy at Hayden Planetarium, and he stopped being an astrophysicist a long time ago.
Wow. There's the punch across the chin right there from Science Bob McGwier.
Yeah. Well, Avi said on our show that he hasn't written a paper in years. So yeah, I mean, look, I think Neil also just might be riling things up. He's very media savvy, so he might just be trolling us, which is very possible. But I think the writing's on the wall. They're either painting themselves into a corner, or they're going to eventually realize, oh gosh, I'm going to have to start actually looking at this now, because this has gotten to a point now where I have to pay attention to it. Either way, they're going to eventually come to this side of the conversation, I think.
Very good. We'll continue the Neil deGrasse Tyson conversation right after we come back from break here at the top of the hour. We got a great roundtable panel for you tonight. If you are listening on in from MUFON, we have Tom Whitmore, Gary Spikes Jr., our Bigfoot guy, and he is our YouTube master at gaining our subscribers, our weekend host, Lynn Wallington. We got Lou Jimenez, Science Bob, and John Hudson. Neil deGrasse Tyson, good or bad for ufology? It's an interesting road that we continue on as science starts to take over UFOs. We'll be back with more Spaced Out Radio coming up after this break. All right, we're clear. Chat away, gentlemen and lady.
Is it all right if I use the restroom for a second?
Yeah. We got 6 minutes.
Okay,
minutes. Great. Dave's going to do that. I'll be back. We're all scrambling. Lynn, it's your show right now.
Awesome. I get the pee show. Fantastic. Thanks, Dave. Hey, just you and me now, John.
Yeah. So if you don't mind saying so, how did you get the concussion?
I hit my. I was an idiot. I hit my head on the car as I was getting in. I just didn't duck enough and just slammed my head into the car somehow. I was in a hurry. I was trying to get my daughter to work. I know. It was so stupid. I was just like, holy fuck.
Oh, man.
Ooh, sorry, I didn't say that. Oh, we're on a commercial break anyways, right?
We're on break.
Yeah. So, yeah, it wasn't great. But, yeah, it sucks.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's to me, it's like, it's when I was younger, like everyone used to say concussions were no big deal. And and now, like with all the research we have, and then you start actually talking to people who have them, it's like, those can be scary things. Like, I mean, there's 16 million different kinds, but it's definitely something you got to be mindful about.
Yeah. I mean, I've had one before, but and it was just like, the effects lasted like a couple of days. It was just a minor one, but this one seems to be hanging on for quite some time. So hopefully it's probably been like, is it 2 or 3 weeks now? 3 weeks, I think. 2.5, 3 weeks, something like that. So.
Yeah. Well, I mean, in many ways, it's your brain's, emergency brake. It's very self-protective. Especially if you lose consciousness.
I did not, thankfully.
Well, that's good.
Yeah, I looked. As Gary said, I looked like a UFC fighter for a while. Luckily, makeup is a great thing and covers it all up. So.
Yes, it does. She did in about 15 minutes. I was like, wow.
Yeah, because he hadn't seen me without makeup on over it. And then I was just like, hey, one morning. And he was like, holy fuck.
Well, I've seen a lot of bruises in my time with my, semi-fighting career myself. And I was like, that's a shiner, boy.
Yeah, it was pretty gnarly. But luckily, it's almost gone. So I'm happy about that.
The biggest thing was and people don't understand what a concussion will do to you. I mean, you could visibly and theoretically tell the difference in your voice and the way you was, interacting with people. You took a whack.
Yeah, I did. Yeah. Luckily, it was after I talked to Avi, so that's good. The important things in life.
Right.
I'm learning even tonight, but I'm like sitting here trying to take notes. I mean, I'm like, golly. Of course, every time you guys get on, I'm like taking notes because I'm just a big guy. I never got into the UFO stuff, but
it's fascinating. It's fascinating stuff.
Hi, Lynn.
Hi, Tom. How are you?
It's late for me. I guess you're on the East Coast, aren't you?
Yeah, it's 1
so
o'clock.
It's even later for you.
It
But
is,
she's always awake for the witching hour.
True. It's my favorite time of day. Actually, no, if I'm not on the show, I'm usually sleeping.
Tom, what time zone are you in?
Central.
Yeah, I am too. Yeah.
Are you back in Texas?
Yes, sir.
Oh, really?
San Antonio, Texas.
San Antonio.
What a lovely place that is. Great food. I love the Riverwalk. And I did a lot of work for one of the best not-for-profit corporations that was ever done with Sweary. I did a lot of work. Yeah, a lot of work with them.
Well, I'm straight north of you, Tom, about 10 hours.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I'm in OKC, Oklahoma.
Yeah, Tulsa is my hometown.
Really? My wife in Tulsa.
Yeah, I'm from the South. I lived in Portland, Oregon 4 years. I couldn't stand that. I moved back down here to Texas, and then I moved to Washington, D.C. for almost 2 years, and I came back here, so I guess I need to stay here.
All right, Lou Jimenez, we got a major question to ask you.
Yeah.
Uh-oh.
All right. And this will determine whether or not you're able to come back on the show after this or not.
All right.
What is your opinion of eating breakfast foods for dinner?
Really?
Get it right. Get it right, Lou.
Come on.
I'm down.
Yeah.
Dirty bastard.
You ever been to a Waffle House? You better be comfortable with having friends.
I love it. Dave is so isolated.
Dave, you do know what I had for dinner
damn.
tonight, right?
I don't even want to know. Don't even want to know. All of you are sick people. All of you are absolutely sick people.
I mean, I'll eat a Pop-Tart for dinner sometimes.
Pop-Tarts are delicious.
No, I know. Yeah.
They're full of mystery chemicals, but they are delicious.
What makes them good?
Better eating through chemistry.
That's right. Yeah.
You
The
guys
advancement
are
of human society.
I thought we had a good crowd here tonight, and then I find this out. This panel's gone to full blown bullshit right now.
You know what, Dave? What you need to do is dip your toe in slowly. Do like a steak and one egg on top, like a fried egg on there.
No way, man. Hold on, guys. Big thank you to Evil Carl, Brock, Murray, Jeremy, Andrew, Tim, Filth, Kevin, Gabe, Dave, Justin, and Kat for the amazing super chats. It's a great way to support this show. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. Ring that bell because we love adding our subscribers here. And here we go with hour number 2 of Spaced Out Radio.
You're listening to Spaced Out Radio with Dave Scott. Follow Dave on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on Facebook, Spaced Out Radio Show.
Here we go with hour number 2 of Spaced Out Radio tonight. My name is Dave Scott. Thank you so much for joining us. We really do appreciate earning your listening ears, especially if you're listening in across our terrestrial affiliates around North America and digitally on KPNL, TalkStream Live, and Revolution Radio. All of our archives are free by going to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Just do me the favor, hit that subscribe button. The Desert Clam has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Obvolute. Obvolute is your password. Use it wisely, space travelers, as the Clam sets the password each and every night right here on Spaced Out Radio. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including rocking out to Bumblefoot and reading up on Captain Shirk's SOR Newswire. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show. We continue on tonight with the SOR Round Table. We have Lou Jimenez, Science Bob McGwier, Lynn Wallington, Tom, what is your last name, Tom? Whitmore. I lost it there for a second. Gary Spikes Jr. and John Hudson. And we're continuing with the science talk because that's the road we are going down. And earlier this month, we had Neil deGrasse Tyson absolutely come in and start trolling the hell out of the UFO field. You know, on Twitter, he was going crazy, basically saying that it's all garbage, it's all for naught, you know, making fun of UFOs and the videos and everything. I mean, John Hudson, let's start with you on this one. What's your thoughts on this?
Well, you know, on a personal level, it's honestly kind of broke my heart because I wasn't necessarily a huge fan of his book, but you know, he's someone who I thought he was a really good representative for the science world to normal people. I loved watching his talks. But when he was doing his show, you started to see a little bit of what we're seeing now, which is that if something is very much against his world model, he reacts to it in a fairly aggressive way. But the fact that he has shown such a lack of just basic scientific curiosity, and just a lack of open-mindedness. It's honestly, it's basically ruined him for me. I mean, I don't enjoy watching him anymore, and it bums me out because I used to really enjoy doing so. But I will say that this last time he got it right back because boy, Alex Dietrich, man, she nailed him in this one tweet, man, and it was so beautiful. He made some snarky comment about the fact that you should have, this type of degree and understand these different concepts, and she came right back with, well, I have this and I've been studying this and I teach this, and just laid it out on him, and he just went quiet it was awesome. It was awesome.
Oh yeah, he got slapped there. Definitely got slapped. Lynn, let's get your opinion.
I just see him as an entertainer, really, at this point in time. Like Bob, I think, was it Bob that was saying, or Luke, he hasn't done much. So at this point, he's just an entertainer. So his opinion doesn't really matter that much to me. I don't know. I'm not that affected by it one way or the other. He's kind of like white bread. We all know it's there. It doesn't have much nutrition to it. It doesn't bring much to the table, but it's there. I guess.
Man,
Wow.
that really hurts me because I like white bread.
I do too.
Well, it's a good analogy because they still sell a lot of it, right? So
Yeah, it's like
it's
Wonder
not like
Bread.
it isn't popular.
Right.
Well, I mean, let's bring you in here, Lou, with Neil deGrasse Tyson, and just talking about the fact that he hasn't been the best friend to ufology, and I think it's sad because for me, Lou, when I look at scientists, and I've learned a lot from people like Science Bob here and other scientists who have been on this show, and the one thing that I've learned being as far back from science as possible is science is about learning and exploring and never saying never. And yet here we have someone who will admit that the universe is infinite and yet won't admit that there is a possibility that there is potentially chances that we are being visited.
Yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you. It's a preposterous way to think. I'm also with John in saying that I'm just truly bummed out by the stance he's taking. It's a big blind. It's either he's trolling us, which is possible. If it's trolling us, hilarious. If it's the latter, which is it's just a big blind spot, and he's now the Catholic priest who refuses to look through the telescope, through Galileo's telescope. It's preposterous. It's a preposterous stance. I mean, to even just to ask the question is preposterous to him, which I feel is it's like I said, he's painting himself into a really lonely corner, and eventually his influence and I feel like he's going to be like that scientist in that Jodie Foster movie Contact that at first was like, no, there's nothing to it. And then halfway through the movie, he's like, yeah, I'd like to nominate myself to be the first guy on the contraption that goes to the other planet. You know, like he's going to do a 180 because he's going to have to. So, you know, let him have his fun. I don't put too much stock in him. I also don't listen to him as much as I used to. But if it wasn't for him, like I feel like I would be in a huge conspiracy rabbit hole, and I don't know if I would have leaned towards science to get me out of it, and he helped me sort of get out of it. And then, you know, you find other scientists and other really smart minds that have the capability of looking at it with an open mind, but also making sure that it meets a scientific rigor and standard.
Bob, I'm holding off on you on right to the end here, if you don't mind. Tom Whitmore from MUFON, we bring you in here. You know, you're somebody who is committed to trying to find these answers to what is going on with these unusual craft that are being seen and reported by everybody from airline pilots to civilians and military alike. So for you to hear someone like Neil deGrasse Tyson shoot this topic down as readily and easily as he does, you know, does that show ignorance, or does it show the fact that he's just not researched it enough?
You know, Dave, I'm almost tempted to think that there's a long-term information program being run, because before Neil deGrasse Tyson, we had Carl Sagan. And Carl Sagan, I think, performed much of the same function, which was to focus the public's mind on the fascination with astronomy, while at the same time not supporting UFO studies. And I'm seeing the same pattern with Neil deGrasse Tyson. I'm a little surprised to hear several of you talk about how much you've already listened to him. The first time I saw him, he just completely turned me off, so I haven't watched him at all. I will say this, though, Dave. I have a book that he co-authored. It's called Accessory to War, The Unspoken Alliance Between Astrophysics and the Military. And I haven't had a chance to read it yet, but the whole topic looks really interesting to me. So I'd like to learn more about that.
Very true. Gary, let's bring you in on this topic, regarding this. I mean, as somebody from the outside looking in, how do you feel about, what is the person who is considered America's top scientist, really berating its citizens who are having experiences?
I might personally, two quick things. How arrogant can we be as a species, knowing the vastness of space and knowing that somehow we was miraculously created, to think that we're the only ones out here. That could happen all over the place. It could be multiple times. But the next thing on him, I have to go back and what is his true motivations? What has caused him to all of a sudden do this and start pushing this way? Knowing that the scientific, even to me, I'm not near as intelligent in this as you guys are. But to me, the proof is already there. It's just how we view it. How could somebody with such an education and such a scientific mind that's literally taught to keep an open mind about all subjects be so closed-minded about something that the proof is there? There's got to be an ulterior motivation, in my personal opinion.
All right, Science Bob, I know you've warmed up for this one. You know, you're somebody who has worked very, very diligently with space. You've got your name on over 20 satellites up in space. So I'm curious for you, when you hear one of your scientific colleagues looking so narrow-mindedly at the UFO phenomena like Neil deGrasse Tyson is, what is your opinion of this? I mean, is that the right attitude to be having?
No. Look, and Lou, I'm proud of him for coming up with a perfect analogy to describe Neil deGrasse Tyson and his behavior. Look, a lot of people don't know the history, so why don't we give a little bit of it? Carl Sagan basically adopted Neil deGrasse Tyson. He drove down from Cornell, went to where Neil deGrasse Tyson lived in New York, and talked him into coming to Cornell. And Neil deGrasse Tyson has been Carl's protege ever since, and he inherited the stuff that Carl Sagan was about, and including his version of cosmos and so forth. But a good scientist wants to do observational science, which means gather data without bias, don't mess with the data, don't make sure it's unadulterated, account for all the possible errors, and then with all that data, try to make a hypothesis. And if you don't have enough data to decide whether a hypothesis is true or false, gather more data and design other experiments. So Neil deGrasse Tyson is not doing what a real scientist would do in this case. So, and I'm going to tell you some other stuff. Carl Sagan had this public persona that was at least partially a facade. I was called to the National Security Agency to go to a meeting in the chief scientist's office at the National Security Agency. And I was there to meet Carl Sagan and a bunch of other people. And what they wanted was all of the technology that Bill Clinton had said NSA and other people had to give away for some reason so they could use it for SETI. And it was really interesting. I told him some work I had done on Venus, and he was all excited because he's a volcanologist. And I'm not going to name the person because they're still very active. But at the end of this meeting, when it looked like we were not going to roll every secret we had out, this person who is very prominent said, you know, when we came here today, we were really hoping you were going to show us the X-Files. And they were serious. Okay, so they are as curious as we are. They want to know what the government knows. The other thing, I saw Carl Sagan's identification. Everybody inside wears a badge. He had a picture badge with his name on it. You don't get that when you're a visitor. Okay. I mean, you know, you got to pay attention and not forget. He was a consultant, and he was regularly in the intelligence community. So Sagan had a public persona, which was partially true. Do I believe he was actively engaged? What I believe is he did not believe in the alien hypothesis. And so he preferred that we not discuss the alien hypothesis and fund it for science because we didn't have any way to falsify that hypothesis. Now, it is stupid beyond compare to say we don't ever see any UAPs. They are not weird. They are not doing things that are non-physical that we cannot explain. That is ridiculousness. It's just preposterous. And I refuse to be a party to it. I won't support it. And I call it out every time. And Avi Loeb has written an article recently saying science should take up UAPs seriously. It should not call them aliens. It would say, let's gather data and see what we can find out. That's good science.
Do you think Neil deGrasse Tyson has one of those badges with a picture on it?
I have no idea, and I doubt it.
He does have nice hair, though. Let's be honest.
Well, I mean, he did pretty. I mean, I find it interesting that you said he did pretty much take the mantle from Carl Sagan
because he did Cosmos
every single way.
In almost every single way. He was not a faculty member, but I do not know that he did, and I never saw him inside, and I was on the inside until completely inside until 2010, and then on the periphery, but still able to go inside until May of last year, and now I'm out. I never saw Tyson in there.
Yeah. I know that. Well, I'm not saying you did. I'm just saying, well, it makes sense that, hey, if there was somebody to fill those shoes and have that sort of liaison between government and the people, he'd be perfect for it.
I'm just telling you, academic scientists, especially the top flight ones, they are on all kinds of panels that advise the government and have clearances. It's ridiculous to think the government is so stupid it wouldn't take advantage of these people and use their expertise. And I knew a lot of them. I lived with and worked with them in Princeton for 27 years. I'm just telling you, they're intimately involved. And I just think they do not want 20 years ago, 10 years ago, funding to support the extraterrestrial hypothesis when there's no evidence and no way to falsify it. That's their opposition, but they make their condemnation too broad. They should want to support and do the kind of observational science that Avi Loeb is proposing, that UFO DAP is proposing, that MADAR is proposing, that Sky Hub is proposing. That's good science and engineering.
Well, I mean, on the flip side, Lynn, we bring you in. We are actually having scientists debate this subject now publicly. They are not hiding behind the doors. They are not hiding from the topic. Even deGrasse Tyson, even though he's not in support of it, he is still talking about the subject. And I think the more scientists that are coming public talking about this is bringing some very positive awareness to the subject of ufology and UAP. Your thoughts?
I agree. Though we still have some ways to go. I mean, I was watching a show where they were talking about Avi's theory about Oumuamua and laughing about it, saying, "Well, like that's crazy." Yeah. So they're getting more open to it, but they're still not open to it. They're admitting that there might be a possibility of something at some point, and let's figure out what these UAPs are. But I don't think they're as open to it as I would like. But for sure, it's a step in the right direction. So that makes me happy.
How about you, Tom?
Oh, I think it's great that they're discussing it. I perceive that DOD, at least elements within the DOD, must be very close. They must be concerned that they could be very close to losing control over this whole conversation. And that's what I find to be very interesting. I know, well, I'm sure there are factions within DOD that are, they're in conflict, and some people want more discussion of this subject and some people don't. But with, the release of the report and all the publicity that has come about, and because of the discussion by really top level people like Dr. Loeb, I wonder if at some point they're going to lose control of the discussion. That would be very interesting.
I think they've come close to losing because Catherine Hicks, who's deputy SecDef, has ordered the Pentagon to participate, and that includes the United States Air Force, the United States Space Force, and the Army, who have been silent.
Very true. John Hudson, your thoughts?
Well, I just that what Bob just mentioned still just blows my mind that happened. I think that was almost more important than the report was. But I mean, I think in a way, what Avi's doing, this project might actually be a kind of a Switzerland type situation for people that either wanted to come out and talk about this but never felt safe to do so. They can now join that program, and it gives them an excuse, an umbrella for them to start talking about this topic without necessarily losing their credibility, because they can at least say, well, look, I'm working with Avi Loeb, give me a break, right? And so you do have kind of a situation where it's not only people talking about it, but a lot of this is about building cover for people so that they can talk about it. I mean, I there's a guy I talk to all the time on this one private forum I'm on, and he's so passionate about this. He's writing software. He's really, and he won't even tell us his name. He's scared to even give us his first name because of where he works, right? And it's not that he's working on top secret stuff. It's that he doesn't want the ridicule. He doesn't want a project that he proposes to get shot down because someone's lost faith in him because he started talking about UAPs. That's tragic. I mean, that's absolutely tragic. And so I think one of the most important things about what Avi's doing and what all this talk is now creating is a gradually safer environment for people that do have a passion for this stuff to start talking about it more publicly and joining the conversation. And that's all good.
I think it's very good. Gary?
I've actually got a question. How does this affect the Department of Defense's top-notch, top security level stuff in the atmosphere? If we have a program with all this open disclosure and people seeing the stuff in space, how is the Department of Defense and all the governments of the world going to protect their assets that they want to keep secret?
You'll never see any of the data. They're not going to reveal the capabilities by giving you away the data from which you can derive it. They may make an English sentence describing what they found, but they will never offer proof.
What if Avi's program gets it?
That's something different because he's not controlled by the United States government.
Then does he become a threat to the program?
No.
Okay, cool.
No, absolutely
Well,
not.
I'm not sure about that, because if you're a citizen and you see the stealth bomber or the stealth fighter fly by before it's made public, it's not inconceivable that a couple of people could show up at your front door and advise you not to talk about it. And I don't know why that can't happen to Avi Loeb if he discovers satellite that nobody's supposed to know about.
I have advice. I have advice for anyone that happens to. Pick up a phone and call Michael Sheehan Esquire and give them hell.
Michael Sheehan or Daniel Sheehan?
Daniel Sheehan Esquire. Give them hell.
I also wonder how many of those objects will actually be picked up. There has been a program going on for many, many, many years, specifically to combat amateur astronomers from tracking satellites. And so I would be, depending on what frequencies they're using and so forth, I wouldn't be surprised if some of the more important assets that we have in orbit essentially won't necessarily show up very well.
Very true. Very true. Panel, I'm going to get you to hold on right there because we are going to go to break here at the bottom of the hour. Lou Jimenez, Gary Spikes Jr., Tom Whitmore, Science Bob McGwier, John Hudson, Lynn Wallington, and myself, Dave Scott, here for the panel. We are halfway done, and we are going to continue rocking and rolling. Next, we're going to get into Bob Lazar. The story continues because there's a new witness that is out. Yes, let's get into sweet Bobby L. when we come back on Spaced Out Radio.
So I met this guy a couple of years ago who told me this story that maybe he shouldn't have. And Bob, you might be able to tell me if there's any accuracy to this. But what he told me was that his father, quite some time ago, was responsible for one satellite program where he had to essentially calculate all of the times that the sun would glint off a certain panel of that satellite so that they could actually fire a small jet to change the position of that satellite to avoid that flare, basically just to avoid any glare from the sun bouncing off that satellite and being seen from the ground. Bob, you think there's any truth to that?
Yes. Yes.
That's a lot
So people do not understand how bright the reflection of the sun is off of solar panels. They have these glass covers over them that keep the bad particles from eating up the stuff that the solar cells are made of. And it's like a little mirror. Some of the sun is reflected, and it's more than enough, especially if they're big satellites, to be seen from the ground. And they would say, okay, we don't want to do that while we're over this area, so we'll turn away. Yes, the answer is yes.
Excuse me.
And they can articulate the panels. So they would do this when they are, because they have batteries. So they just run on batteries. And once they're past that, they flip the solar panels back up and let them charge the batteries again. It's really, this stuff is, once you think it through, it's high school geometry.
Yep. And you can get the report on a lot of this. It's usually about 25 years behind schedule. So I think you can get from 75 or there might be one newer than that. And you can see some of the defensive technology that's been put into some of these satellites at much earlier stages. And there's a lot of thought and a lot of energy put into making these devices non-visible.
Yep.
All right. The public wants to see your name. Bob, I got to ask, because it's been asked in the chat room, are you wearing lederhosen and have a beer stein right beside you?
I have a Harry Potter cup because I love Harry Potter, and there's the Marauders map. So that's not a beer stein, and I'm not wearing lederhosen. I have, what is this shirt? It's a map. It's a world map.
That's awesome.
I think we need the lederhosen next time, Bob.
I'm happy to put on my coveralls. I wear them almost every day.
Gary Spikes Jr., Mr. Apnea in the chat room is very impressed that in Oklahoma you have a working air conditioner.
That is a big investment for us. We budgeted in because we got to 104 down here today. And, buddy, with my health issues from the past couple of weeks, I'm not getting out from underneath that air conditioner.
Thank you, Bigfoot Michigan Rob. He says, great show, Dave, and your incredible panel. So, thank you. I appreciate that.
Michigan Rob is a great fan.
Yeah, he's amazing. He's amazing. Lynn, who is on your show tomorrow night? It's John Hudson, isn't it?
It is John Hudson, the one and only.
Yeah.
Nice.
Should be fun.
I'm stealing him from you tonight, eh? Yeah, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay.
You know why? Because I forgot to tell John at the final Friday of the month we do the Roundtable, so we don't do news. And I'm like, oh, God, he's got everything prepared. And how do I screw it?
Well, it's his subject matter anyways.
It is totally his subject matter.
In this group.
Yeah, that's why tomorrow we're talking witches.
All right, awesome.
Yes.
Dave over here agreeing with me being the odd duck. Now I feel bad.
What are you talking about?
You said, and I said, I'm the odd duck in this group.
No.
That's I'm the token Canadian here. Right now, that would be me.
Dave is really an odd duck.
All right, we got 30 seconds here, guys. Big thank you to Guillermo, to 509er, Science Bob, Patrick, Carl, Brock, Murray, Jeremy, Andrew, Tim, Filth, Kevin, Gabe, Dave, Justin and Cat Chaser for the amazing super chats. Really appreciate it. And we're going to fire things up here in a few seconds. So thank you so much. Here we go, everyone. We pass the halfway point of Spaced Out Radio tonight. My name is Dave Scott. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. Really do appreciate earning your listening ears. Want to remind you that if you missed portions of this show or others, check out our free archives by going to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do old Davey the favor, hit that subscribe button. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including rocking out to Bumblefoot and reading up on Captain Shirk's SOR Newswire. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on Instagram, Spaced Out Radio Show. Before we continue on the panel tonight, I want to bring in Lou Jimenez, because this gentleman here came onto the UFO scene very, very hard, very fast with the Big Phone Home. And Lou, you got another Big Phone Home coming up here in September. Tell our audience of Spaced Out Radio what it's all about and how you came up with this idea.
Well, basically, I came up with the idea after listening to a lot of podcasts, UAP podcasts, UFO podcasts, and sometimes at the end, they'd be like, well, you know, the best thing you could do is call your representative and ask them for more data or transparency. I was like, well, that's not very inspiring. You know, how many people are actually doing that after that? And that's kind of when it popped in my head, you know, almost like an 80s telethon, like Live Aid or something. I was like, oh, how cool would it be if we can get, you know, all of the great voices in the UAP community to come together on the same day and encourage their fan base, encourage their followings, their colleagues, to call Congress and have a list of demands, because we're taxpayers and we have a right to this information. Whether anyone likes to admit it or not. It's also a bipartisan issue. It's a really great way to talk about politics, but without getting into really heavy arguments, because look, Marco Rubio's interested in this, and so is Hillary Clinton. Total opposite spectrums, and they like this topic, and I think they would find a lot of common ground if all they could do is talk about this topic for 2 hours, and then they could talk about whatever they want after that. So like things like that. So this Big Phone Home, we're going to be doing for 3 days, and it's going to have 3 different focuses. The first day will be, folks like you, Dave, hopefully come on the show the day of, and again, encourage your following to call Congress. We're going to have a website where you can easily get in contact with your local and state representatives, and demand congressional hearings. It's time. Like, we want congressional hearings. We want them as soon as possible, and we want to let our representatives know that this is what we want. So the first day will be, voices within the community, podcasters, YouTubers, personalities, things like that. And then second day will be Science Day. We're going to have Avi Loeb and a lot of members from the Galileo project. We're talking to, I got to talk to Rich Hoffman. He's been on the show before as well. We'd love to get the SCU and any other scientific organizations to come talk to us on that day and encourage science to call Congress and, ask for congressional hearings, because I think it's important. And then on the third day, this will be Labor Day weekend, by the way, so in about a month, we're going to be doing veterans and current military members come on the show and give us their perspectives. So we're going to try and do the whole gamut of the UAP discussion. I mean, my big thing is the way I determine whether or not UAP information is good enough is, can I lay it at the desk of my senator and convince them that this is worthy of looking at? If it doesn't meet that standard, I try to not spend too much of my time on it. So, that's our biggest focus. And yeah, I mean, we need as many voices and as many people doing this as possible. You don't have to just call. You can email, you could write, you could tweet, which is insanely useful. There's a lot of things that we're going to be doing that'll be great to activate yourself, It's a great day to, you don't have to go anywhere. It's super easy to do. You feel really good after you're done doing it, and it's a progressive step forward to moving the ball on a political spectrum down the field.
Fantastic.
I think it's very similar to go for it, John. Sorry.
I just wanted to add that one of the coolest things that you did for the last one is a lot of people had no idea how to do any of this. And so, you created this great website where you could go in, you could put in where you are, and it would give you a list of the numbers that you needed to call. It gave you example script. I mean, it hand fed you the entire process so well that you had no excuse not to do it. And while that doesn't sound like a big deal, it is. It really helped people. And it was an awesome thing for you guys to do.
Man, I appreciate it. Yeah, it was a lot of work to do that. I mean, we focused on 8 congressional committees and subcommittees that specifically have to do with the topic of UAPs. So that way we're not wasting any time of congressmen and senators that have nothing to do with this topic. So we're really focused on those 8 committees. And then, it's all hands on deck. It's gut check time. It's look in the mirror time. If you really want this information, you're going to have to help us demand it. And so we're going to be doing it for 3 straight days. And we hope you join us. It's a free event, and everyone's welcome to come. And yeah.
Where can my
you
listeners
sleep
find
this time?
Listeners can find it. Well, right now we're building the website, so we're redoing the website, so it's a lot more user friendly. I mean, the last time I did this, I was by myself, and now I've got a great team of folks helping me out. So I would say in the next week we'll have a website up, but the website will be www.thebigphonehome.com. You can check out my channel, Unidentified Celebrity Review, and we'll have updates coming all the time. We've got a poster that's got names of the people who will be there. Yeah. Dave, I'd love to add your name to the list. And
I would love to be there
and get conversation going, man, because it's important.
This is so important. Look, you cannot go and sit in front of a committee of Congress and lie.
Right.
You cannot do it. And this is why it's being fought tooth and nail. We need hearings.
Yeah. And also Christopher Mellon and Lou Elizondo have been screaming at the top of their lungs now for 4 years. 4 years they've been screaming for help, and they need us. Like, they need a sea of people to be bothering Congress about this. They really do. And it's going to help them a lot when they go into these meetings, when they go into these conversations with senators and lawmakers and high level government officials, and they bring in these pilots. It's going to go a very long way for us to get more information. Even if a lot of it's going to be classified, more data is more data is more data, man. And more data is a good thing.
And you only need one committee chairman. Just one.
Yep.
One committee chairman can order hearings, and it happens. So I just want to make sure everybody knows we are competing with a resurgence of COVID, and between $1 and $3.5 trillion on infrastructure and voting rights acts. There's a lot of stuff going on. So we got to be really, really loud and really ugly to get these hearings.
And I think, Lou, what I would like to do is in order for us to promote this event, because I do think it's important, is a couple weeks beforehand, let's get you back on this show, either with me or with Lynn, and we can spend some time on this to make sure that our audience is prepared and knows where to go to watch this event as well, because it is necessary, and you've done a hell of a job in bringing real validation and real good people to come together. We're always screaming, why aren't we coming together? And somehow Lou Jimenez comes out of nowhere, drops an elbow off the top turnbuckle and says, I'm grabbing everybody, and we're going to go right in the center of the ring and have a free-for-all. I love it. And I'm very excited to help you out in getting our listeners over to supporting this event as well.
Hey, man, I really appreciate it. It means a lot. Look, we can all have different opinions. That's okay. We're all going to have different ideas. Some of them are going to be wrong. Some of them are going to be right. The bottom line is nobody really knows yet. Nobody here, I really don't think at the highest levels of government truly know, because unless you can follow it back to where it came from, how do you really know? But with that said, they do know more than we do. and we pay out of our noses through taxes for these toys and these top secret listening devices. Look, I'm not interested in the process of how you got the to UAP. I just want to see the UAP. I want to know what's going on, and I think a lot of folks are on the same page, and yeah, man, we could use all the help we can get.
We're there. And
awesome.
if
I can't wait.
keep us in touch, both Lynn and myself, and we'll make sure that we make something happen. Let's move on here on the roundtable because we only have Lou until the top of the hour, and we're going to continue on with Bob Lazar because Mystery Wire has now reported that there is a new witness to Bob Lazar working at Area 51's S4. This is a gentleman named TJ Genazzo. Never spoken publicly about this, but says that he worked with the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department beginning in 1978, doing patrol for a couple of years, and then he moved into protection detail. And over the next 12 years, Genazzo worked his way up the ranks and was offered an investigator's position, and he spent 20 years there. And apparently, he investigated Bob Lazar. He saw Bob Lazar. He knows the Bob Lazar story is incredibly credible, according to George Knapp, who broke the story back in 1989. Should we be surprised that 30 plus years later, Science Bob, we have another witness?
No, I'm not surprised. I think George and John Lear and Jim Goodall and a lot of people in and around Area 51 had lots of people talking to them about Bob Lazar and what was going on out at Papoose Lake S4, etc. But it was all off the record and couldn't be quoted. So I think this is what, but enough of them went and talked to George's producers and lawyers so that he could do that story on Las Vegas TV that blew up the world and revealed Area 51 to everybody who didn't already know it was there. Okay, so I am not surprised that there are people coming forward now and saying that they knew Lazar was out there. I mean, look, Jim Goodall told us about going into a very high-ranking office with the Navy and the Pentagon and showing documentation of Lazar and the people in that office having a fit because they realized they had been caught. And I think Goodall is just such a piece of work.
Story.
It's a fantastic story. So, and he saw all sorts of stuff in Bob Lazar's house before Bob Lazar was ever on TV. We're talking about diplomas and other things that he had from when he was in school, and he was zeroed. He was erased by a professional eraser and made a fool of. I think he's just lucky. I think he feels lucky he got out alive. Okay, so my opinion is Bob Lazar was hired and worked for EG&G. I have no clue what his job was, but he was probably an EG&G contractor working on projects out at the test range. What he did, I have no personal knowledge of, but his story is that he saw these vehicles, and the thing that I keep returning to that you just cannot get past if you want to completely trash Bob Lazar. He took George, John Lear, Gene Huff, all sorts of people out to the desert every Wednesday and said, in 15 minutes, the UFOs are going to come up right over there every time until the government confronted him. He had to have access through some means to the classified test schedule for whatever those weird things were that have flown. And now those videos have been subjected to stacking. So the individual frames of what was there have been stacked on top of each other, and guess what we get when we stack all those things on top of each other and stabilize them? We get a perfect flux liner.
Absolutely.
So I'm just telling you, the Lazar story, we don't know all that's behind it, how much of it's true, but pieces of it hang together.
Tom Whitmore, you've been silent for way too long. We got to poke you because you haven't even blinked, man. We weren't sure if you were frozen or not. Are you alive? You okay?
I'm alive. I'm alive.
All right.
Even though it's a little late here, but that's okay.
All right. I'm looking over at you right now. Give us your thoughts on a new eyewitness coming out confirming Bob Lazar.
Well, I'm looking at the Mystery Wire interview, and it's really extensive. There's a lot of material in here, or a lot of verbiage, I should say. And I haven't had a chance to read it yet, but I'm going to, and I'm going to read it very carefully and see if they're see what this person is really claiming. But here's another thought, and we were talking about Travis Walton earlier. Why, after 45 years, Lazar came out around 1990? So that's 30 years ago.
1989, 32 years.
89. Yep.
Yeah. So why is this person surfacing now? After 30 years. That's my first question.
What did he have to gain?
Well, it could also be that he just retired. He was a police officer. He looks about retirement age right now, so that could be it. If I had to take a guess, I'd say that's what it is. But they didn't answer that question, so that's just speculation.
Yeah. Another thing
go ahead, Tom.
Another concern I have is that, okay, Lazar claims that his background was wiped. He was sheep dipped. But what about his diplomas? It seems like he would still have those. I mean, did the Men in Black come into his house and take them away? Where are the diplomas?
So I might have a possible explanation for that. So I worked at Nortel Networks many, many, many years ago. And we had rooms filled with screens that were wired into Stanford. And you could take classes at Nortel, at Stanford via these terminals. And this is before the internet was out. So this was pretty high tech stuff. There was a basic internet, but this
satellite
was like in
dishes.
94.
Satellite links.
Yeah. And basically what was really interesting is that you had two choices. You could take all the course material you needed to get a degree, and you would get the degree, but it would only work inside Nortel. And you get promotions based on it, and you get your pay increases, and you get the knowledge, but it once you left Nortel, that degree was not transferable. Like Stanford would not recognize it. Or you could take a few extra classes and pay like a $5,000 fee or something like that, and then you would actually get the official diploma from Stanford recognizing what you did. But Nortel had this program set up, and it was available to all employees. And I have to imagine that Los Alamos had something similar. And so part of me wonders if maybe what Lazar got was a degree that was much easier to erase than it would have been if he'd been a normal student.
Maybe so.
Maybe he got a degree under another name.
Well, another thing, that's possible. The other thing to remember too is that for people that don't think they can wipe out your degree, they create degrees. So if for a deep cover person, they have programs set up with different universities where they can manufacture a completely synthetic degree with a completely synthetic history. And if they can actually create that, it means they can delete it. So I'm not saying
it's called a legend.
Yeah, that's right. That's what I was going to say. It's a legend.
It's a legend. I've had 7 legends in my life. You're right.
And so if you can make it,
so go ahead,
you can
John.
delete it. No, please. All I was going to say is if you can make an object, you can delete an object.
Yeah, and I always hear people like, well, what about his paper copy? What about his paper copy of the degree? And I'm just kind of like, well, I have several degrees. I don't know where they are. They're probably somewhere. Like I don't have them.
Well,
I have a PhD in applied mathematics from an Ivy League school. If my life depended on it, I couldn't tell you where it is. It's not something I hang up and worship every day.
Thank you. I've said that before, and people thought I was crazy. Like, why wouldn't you keep track of it? Because I'm like, because
No,
I don't.
I have no
care.
idea what the
Like,
damn thing is.
No, I don't either.
here's another thing too. I know where I got my degree. I went back to get a copy of my diploma, and they're only legally responsible to keep them for 10 years.
Yep.
So maybe. My question is, I'm a big Bob Lazar supporter myself. I'm not as knowledgeable, but once again, not as knowledgeable about the subjects you have. But once again, we have another individual. I think this is the second or third that verified that they seen him on site.
I'm going to go back. The strongest evidence that he worked there was he took lots of people out and they witnessed the things fly.
Absolutely.
You just cannot take that out.
No.
You've got to explain it if you want to call him a fake.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And what did
Very
he have
true.
to gain from it, too? That's the other question I always ask. His life was destroyed by it. So why would he have said this if it wasn't true?
Yeah, I think the weakest part of Bob's story is element 115. If he's got the crap, let's see it.
That's a good point.
Last night, we were talking about Bob Lazar in the story and the fact that KLAS has never retracted the story. I look at this as from a complete media back side, knowing how the media works, with my, you guys are talking master's degree. I'll throw in my little broadcast journalism diploma here, to throw. I just want to feel special. I'm just going to say that, right? But the fact is,
with his Marvin the Martian hat on.
But KLAS has never retracted the story. If a story is wrong, a media outlet has to retract. We see it every week in newspapers where companies will accidentally screw up on advertisements, and the paper has to run a retraction of those. And the fact that even on a television station that they did not retract the story, that they still continue to run the story, it isn't about ratings. A media outlet can get in a lot of trouble for things like that. And that's why they have to go through their lawyers on a number of different stories, much like this one, where lawyers were involved. And for almost every UFO story that George Knapp has broken since then, lawyers have been involved. We have to remember that there is a lot going on behind the scenes. And I don't want to hear this crap, well, the media is bought and the media isn't trustworthy and all this. No, in 1989, the media was much different than what it is today. It wasn't clickbait. It wasn't about headline news. It was about actual journalism and stories back then. And
I
we
was
have to remember
fixing to
that.
get you on that, Dave, because I was like, what's the difference in the media in Canada than the United States? Because that ain't happening right now down here.
No, but back then it was a different place.
Yeah.
But you can't prove that the story's true, and you can't prove that it's false.
No.
Right. That's the problem with it.
But again, if you want to call him a total fake, you have to figure out how to explain the really weird evidence.
Well, that's the thing.
Forget all of it. Forget his narrative. Explain the evidence.
Yeah. Well, I think if you're calling him a total fake, you're just not, you haven't looked at the totality of things, because it's not a total fake that he worked at Los Alamos. He definitely worked there. It's not a fake that he's a scientist. He works with very exotic materials. That's what he does for a living.
Yep.
He's a very well-read person. You can tell. But there's a lot of holes. There's a lot of weird things about Bob Lazar that are just strange. I mean, Lynn, you're a psychology major, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like, what? This is it might get me in a lot of trouble, but like, what kind of psychology?
Don't forget, she's a witch.
No, but what kind of psychology do you have to run a brothel? Like, to think of that as a good.
Exactly. We got to go to break right there. Lou Jimenez, Science Bob McGwier, John Hudson, Tom Whitmore, Gary Spikes Jr., Lynn Wallington. We got one more hour of the Roundtable coming up right after this. All right, we're clear, guys.
Have you guys ever heard?
He's has these messed up pieces in his story. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, everyone has seen the videotape of him pleading guilty in a courtroom to running a brothel.
Right.
Okay, so yeah, that doesn't help his story. But you got to explain the stuff that does if you want to totally wipe him out.
No, I don't want to totally wipe him out. I'm just trying to figure out.
No, I'm not talking about you. I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about other people that want to completely wipe him out. They have to explain the stuff that supports his story.
Let me ask you this. If he did not work at Los Alamos, how in any situation, is there any way that he could have been at the right place at the right time to see the aircraft fly away in a pattern? He would have had to been there every week.
Okay, you're making only one mistake, and I don't want our audience to get confused. None of that happened at Los Alamos. All that happened at Area 51.
Yeah, but I'm saying when he worked at Los Alamos, that's what got his foot in the door. So he had to been at Area 51 at the perfect time and in the perfect place to see the airplane fly. Then he had to go back to that. If he was faking all this, then he had to go back every week and catch it at the perfect time and the perfect place. What person has that kind of time to build a farce? To me, that adds more credibility that he did work there.
No, he did all that while he was still employed by them.
That's what I'm saying.
That's
I mean, he was being gutsy as heck because, I mean, they don't take prisoners out there. I mean, there are signs, even back then, all around that place. If you come in here, we have the right to kill you.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. That to me, that even gives more credibility to a story.
You got to explain that away if you want to say he's a nothing.
Well,
we know for a fact he was employed at Los Alamos because he's in a damn Los Alamos phone book.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, you can't debate that part, but Christopher Mellon did give kind of an explanation as to why he might have known about secret flight tests going on around Papoose Lake in Area 51, and maybe a little eavesdropping at a local watering hole where a lot of pilots and folks hang out. That's possible too.
Absolutely possible. But you got to explain it away by something like that with evidence if you want to wipe him out.
Right.
In other words, if you can source where he got the schedule, then you can wipe Bob out. Right. But until you do not have the evidence. You gotta have the evidence.
We've also seen a creep over time. For a long time, the argument was he didn't actually work at Los Alamos, right? Then finally, enough evidence came out. Okay, fine. Okay, he worked at Los Alamos. Well, there's no way he would have worked at Area 51. Well, then we found out that any position he held at Los Alamos, he would have needed a Q clearance for. So the fact that they gave him a Q clearance, right, means that he had some credibility and credentials that allowed him to get such a thing, right? That would
that statement. Your hypothesis is incorrect. So,
why so?
At Lannell and Oak Ridge and other places, I can go right there right now today, walk on the Oak Ridge or Lannell campus, take you into a cafeteria and show you 50 Chinese citizens. They don't have Q clearances.
You don't need a Q clearance to run a house of prostitution.
No, you don't.
No, you don't.
But what I'm saying is
or a degree in physics.
No, but what I'm saying is the fact that it was hard for a lot of people to believe he could get a job at Area 51. But if he had a Q clearance while working at Los Alamos,
but we don't have any evidence that we do not have evidence that he had a Q clearance. He could have worked at Los Alamos without a Q clearance in a low-level technician function.
Well, George Knapp did walk on Los Alamos with Bob,
and he walked him around.
Yeah,
he walked him around to the
no
labs.
Clearance, no badges, just walking around Los Alamos like no big deal.
So there's an ad that was placed by the contractor EG&G for a technician very much like what Lazar would have had by some of the and like it specifically said on there that you had to have an active Q clearance for that role. And so that's the logic that came. And I also know that Los Alamos got in trouble in, I believe, the late 80s or early 90s for the fact that they were requiring too many of their employees to have Q clearances that didn't necessarily really need them. They had a habit of requiring a lot of people to have Q clearances just to work there. And so that's where the hypothesis came up that even if he had not been a physicist, even if he'd just been a technician, he would have still needed a Q clearance. I mean, I was being sponsored to get a Q clearance, and all I was doing was consulting with them over network architecture and data center design.
Oh, that's
so
crazy.
I mean,
I'm sorry, John. I'm sorry. That's not correct. You would have been required to have a Q clearance to work on their networks. It carries Q cleared data.
Mm-hmm.
Well, but Lazar also claims that Edward Teller opened the door for him.
Yes. He has a fairly convincing story that Edward Teller took a liking to him and made the phone call to EG&G.
And
if Edward Teller called you, at EG&G, I think you'd jump, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Yeah. That guy, I mean, it's close to a god as you had in that world. I mean, I don't think anyone would have said no to him.
All right, guys, hold on. Lou, are you sticking around?
I can stick around because my lady just went to the restroom. She's good to go if you want me to stick around.
Yeah, we'd love you to.
Let's go. Hang on, man.
Yeah,
Come on. Let's do it.
Just hang on. All right.
I'm in.
Thank you to all the super chatters out there. We're going to continue on with hour number 3 here in 5 seconds. So sit back. Here we go.
Would you like to connect with us? Head to spacedoutradio.com for all your latest show info. Now, back to Dave Scott and SOR.
Here we go with the third and final hour of Spaced Out Radio tonight. My name is Dave Scott. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. We really do appreciate earning your listening ears wherever you are on this beautiful planet we call Earth. Thanks to everyone listening in on our terrestrial affiliates around North America, digitally on TalkStream Live, Revolution Radio, and KPNL. All of our archives are free by going to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do old Davey the favor, hit that subscribe button. The Desert Clam has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club, Obvolute. Obvolute is your password. Use it wisely, space travelers, as the Clam sets the password each and every night right here on Spaced Out Radio. Our website, spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including rocking out to Bumblefoot and reading up on Captain Shirk's SOR Newswire. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on Instagram, Spaced Out Radio Show. We continue on with the SOR Round Table panel tonight. We have from the weekend show, Lynn Wallington, Gary Spikes Jr., our YouTube guy. Yeah, he's known for making our YouTube channel just a little bit better than it was before. Tom Whitmore, Science Bob, Lou Jimenez, and John Hudson are here. And we're debating Bob Lazar. Now, Lou, you had a question for Lynn right before the break about being a psychology degree. Go ahead.
Well, I just always found it interesting because I was like, man, what are the odds that I mean, we're not talking about just a Q clearance. We're talking about the most high-level clearance ever, right? Because you're seeing space material, craft, a whole hangar of them, possibly a body. So, like, I always wondered, well, the psychology of that would a government grant somebody who has the capability of opening a brothel? And what kind of mindset do you have to be in to actually choose that as a career choice? Like that's not, like I'm assuming his upbringing as a child wasn't normal if his career choice was, I think I'm going to open a brothel.
But they were legal in the state he did it in.
I am not saying that it's the oldest profession in the world, right? I'm not shaming the profession. I'm not knocking the idea of making money that way. That's not what I'm saying. What I am saying is to collect money, to set up the rooms, to do the security cameras, to hire the women, like to run a brothel. What kind of upbringing do you think you had? Like, I'm assuming it wasn't very stable. That's all I'm saying. And would a company that is requiring the ultimate secrecy hire somebody that might be unstable or able to carry secrets. Clearly, he wasn't able to carry secrets because he told them, right? Like, I don't know. I'm just throwing that theory out there. I'm asking the psychologists.
I'm going to say something that you might think is a bit controversial, but just because he runs a brothel doesn't mean he's unstable, in my opinion.
Right.
And I've worked with a lot of PhDs, and some of the smartest people, book-wise, make the worst decisions in any other aspect of their lives. So it's very possible that he saw it as a good business venture and didn't think much more of it than that.
He'd lost all of his jobs.
Yep.
He was desperate for money. His wife was mad, getting ready to leave him, probably been cheating on him, and he needed money. He did what he could.
Yeah.
Fair.
He got desperate.
Look, that's why I asked the question.
No, I don't know any of that, but I'm telling you how it would happen. Look, just like Lynn, from the other side, I have worked in cleared spaces with cleared people for decades. I saw lots of people make effed up decisions and ruin their lives.
Hell, look at the Unabomber.
Yeah. Look at I saw a person go to do a job, and while there, they snuck around and went and had some illicit sex while they were on the job in a foreign country. And I saw them frog marched out the front of the building by security. I mean, I have seen really smart people completely screw up.
Right, but they were fired from their jobs, right?
Yeah, but I mean, Bob Lazar was fired from his job after he blabbed to George. He was still working when he went on camera. He had not left that job yet.
Did he ever come out?
No, Why?
I think Bob Lazar, Bob, I hate to correct you on that, but Bob went to George to save his butt because of the death threats. He had been fired because he was arrested.
Okay, maybe you're right. You're right.
He was arrested with Gene Huff, and because he was hiding in a trunk when they found him, the trunk of the car when they found him.
Got it.
I hate to correct that part of the story.
No, that's good. That's good. Let's get it right.
Did he ever?
Now, one question. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Gary,
did he ever say why he came forward with all this information?
To protect himself. That was the big one, was he felt that if he went in front of the media, because the story was that they were trying to kill him, they being the U.S. government, were trying to kill him to keep him silent, then he ran to the media and went public in order to save his life, because if he got knocked off, he would have...
Yeah, the story was there was an assassination attempt or something like it that failed.
Okay, I think he's asking why. I think he's
freeway.
asking why, though, and the reason why is because he felt like this information should be publicly known. That was his original impetus for doing what he did.
Let's reanalyze for the listeners, or reanalyze the timeline. He came forward, then they tried to kill him, or they tried to kill him, and then he came forward.
Tried to kill him, and then
he came forward.
What precipice did they use? Did he say why they was trying to kill him?
Yeah, because he was out showing John Lear, Gene Huff, and everybody else these flights and blabbing his mouth.
Okay, so he violated his security clearance.
Right.
Oh, yes, no doubt about that.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry.
He's admitted that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, and they probably had him under surveillance anyway.
They definitely did.
The base.
They
opened
a counterintelligence investigation, and they followed him around.
Yep.
Yeah.
Now, one question I have for you, Lynn, because you might have some knowledge about this, is when I read his book, which I have challenges with his book, but when I read the recent book, one of the interesting data points that came out was that at one point when he went in to work, he was hypnotized as part of a process. Now, that in itself is not what I'm curious about is that in one specific case, he was asked to drink a liquid. I believe it was a pine. I think he said it had a pine sort of flavor to it. But he was asked to drink a liquid before he was hypnotized. Mm-hmm. Now, my research on hypnosis because actually I have a family history related to hypnosis, going back many generations, is that the one place where hypnosis does get very dangerous is there are certain drugs that you can put into someone's system that if they're on those drugs when they're hypnotized, you can have a very dramatic impact on their concept of what's real and what isn't. Is that your understanding as well?
I guess it would depend on what exactly we're talking about, what he ingested. But my thought would be that perhaps for a time it would, but initially, the brain tends to find ways to repair itself whenever possible. And so I would think that. Go ahead.
I just want to question. That book is really controversial. It's really controversial. I don't even believe Bob wrote it.
What is
it? It contradicts Bob. I mean, it's.
I don't believe he authored a word in it.
I agree with you. I think no, it was a ghostwriter. But I've heard him tell that story verbally as well. That he was asked to drink this because he describes the fluid, and the instant I heard that someone asked him to drink something before he was hypnotized, that just sent all sorts of bells off for me. Like, wait a second, why would, I cannot think of any reason why someone would do that unless it was for nefarious reasons.
Okay, just got to remember the era. So during the era, a lot of what was being developed out at Area 51 was intelligence gathering sensors for airplanes, satellites, etc. And the CIA was heavily involved. And what else was the CIA doing back then? Giving all sorts of drugs to people to manipulate them. So, and that ended later, but it was well underway then. So I don't find that story inconsistent with what we know history is, but we don't know the details. And I just don't believe Bob wrote a word in that book, so I wouldn't trust anything in it.
No, I think that's totally fair. I just bring it up because it's written text. He has said it verbally, but the reason why I bring it up is that what I've long felt is that everything Bob says, he completely believes, but that some of what he says was not actually accurate. And that somehow his understanding of what he saw was either he was told things that were intentionally not true to seed him with misinformation, or he was somehow manipulated in some way. And when I heard him talk about this hypnosis case with the fluid, that just sent some bells off for me. And so I was just kind of curious of what your opinion would be on the chance of someone's, of data someone's given being perceived as more real than it should be because of a hypnosis process under a controlled substance.
The only part of his story that's important is whether or not he saw vehicles fly out at S4. We know he saw vehicles fly out at S4 because videos have been taken. They've now been processed with modern techniques, and when they squeeze down to what is underlying, it's a flux liner. The sport model.
I agree. Blew my mind.
I have to re-allude back to something. Bob, you've worked with DOD multiple times, correct?
Many times.
You took an oath, correct?
Yes, I did.
So did I. Tom, I take it you probably worked with DOD and the U.S. government a few times?
Nope, I'm total civilian.
Are you? Okay.
Yeah.
We took an oath to keep secrecy for our government.
Yep.
Here's the problem I have. I've realized something tonight. The man stepped away from that oath, knowing the risk.
Yep.
What would happen to him?
Well, he would be prosecuted, which is the strangest part of the entire story.
Yeah.
Is that he has not been prosecuted for violating his oath. So, and let me tell you, whenever you take a person who's violated their security oath with really, really dangerous information to court, they get the right of discovery. You have to show, the prosecution has to show their bona fides. and they don't want that stuff coming out.
That's the reason you
see. And to me, the weirdest part of this whole story is the fact that today, 32 years later, Bob Lazar is a government contractor. So if this is somebody they were trying to kill, this is somebody who allegedly stole element 115 out of Area 51. How the hell is he trying today a government contractor? That's what doesn't make sense to me.
Maybe it's a case of, keep your friends close, but your enemies closer. If he's working for them, they have.
Well, he's a supplier. He's a supplier of materials. Yeah. Yep. I don't understand. I don't find it inconsistent.
But I don't think anyone was trying to kill him. I think that was a paranoid conclusion he came to. I don't actually believe that they were trying to kill him. They were messing with him. They were doing all sorts of. He'd come out and find the gun that he had stashed under a seat on the driver's side, or on top of the seat. Someone had clearly got into his car. They were messing with him. But the only real evidence he had that they were trying to kill him was he was on the road once, thought he heard a gunfire, and his tire blew out. And so he thought that he'd been shot at on the freeway. And that's what freaked him out. And that was his only real evidence. I mean, they threatened him verbally. But the only actual hard evidence he had they were trying to kill him was his tire blowing out. And that may have just blown out because he drove over a nail.
And so it would blow in the heat of the desert.
Absolutely.
And if you believe
they'd hired the mob, it wouldn't have been a problem.
If you believe, exactly. And if you believe the hundreds of witnesses in Los Alamos, in Roswell, they threaten people all the time with stuff they can never do.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
They threaten and scare them, but they never could do it if the person went F you.
Do we know if the episode of him going under hypnosis and ingesting whatever it was that they gave him, do we know if that happened before or after they threatened him?
I believe that happened before, but I also believe it did happen after he had started taking people out to see the UFOs. But I might be wrong on that timeline, because unfortunately the timeline in the book is different than the timeline he stated, and so some of the things are out of order.
I think the book is useless as any kind of evidence.
I'm wondering, because if it happened beforehand, they could have implanted that paranoia into him. I mean, if they were trying to threaten him, if they were trying to scare him, that would have been a really great time to add to that.
But if they drugged him, does that add credibility to his story, or does it take away from it?
But nothing detracts from the videos that we can now squeeze into a flux liner.
Well, let me ask
nothing.
Let me ask this. Gary had touched on security oaths. I've never seen a whistleblower on this level not get arrested. And I think if the NSA or the DOD or any security apparatus with a 3-letter acronym, I think they would slap whatever charge they wanted to on Bob Lazar to shut his ass up and throw him in jail. You don't have to show any UFOs. You don't have to show any secret programs. You could just say he broke his security oaths. Period. Full stop.
No, they have to. I'm sorry, you're incorrect. You're just wrong. You're just wrong. You have to have evidence that Bob is privy to, along with his attorney, to convict him of a crime. Yeah. So they may manufacture evidence of something else that's not UFOs. They can claim he violated security oath by talking about that, but it's just very difficult. I think the end result was they said everybody's going to think this guy's crazy. We'll just call him crazy. We'll erase his whole life, and then nobody will ever actually believe him, and nothing will ever come of it.
I think the smartest thing he ever did was go to George Knapp and make it very public. Very public.
Yep.
There's a person by the name of Daniel. Person by the name of Daniel Hale, and he was a drone whistleblower, and he was just sentenced to 45 months in prison. And he had given like 150 pages of documents to a journalist, about the government using drones to kill people. But that's an example of someone that disclosed what they consider to be secret or top secret information. And
they had that paperwork. They had the
yeah. That's the thing. That's an important point, because there are people, but there's always documents involved. Bob didn't bring out any documents.
Yep.
Right. It was all just what he said.
Well, but he claimed to have element 115. I think if anything, that would be what they'd want.
He claimed that off and on. He got really cagey about it. If he had anything, and that's an if, I think it's very possible that they took it back at some point. But that's a very sketchy part of the story.
I don't think you'd have to dig very deep to find George Knapp saying he knows it's real and he knows approximately where it is.
Well, the question is it out there? And if so, the bigger question is, what orifice did he use to sneak it out? Right? Because he's going through all sorts of searches before he goes back on that Janet jet back to Vegas. All right. How far up his ass did he stuff this? and is that even safe? Like I'm not even being. It's funny to say, and trust me, internally I am laughing right now. But there's a reality. How did it get out? If S4
at 5 o'clock,
if
this
S4,
man in Vegas blew up.
Well, I think you probably already know. I mean, he could take a balloon inside, shove it in the balloon, and shove it up his ass.
Wow.
I mean, at that time, did they have X-ray and metal detection technology at every gate? You know,
I mean,
they probably didn't.
He talks about a hand scanner that he had to put his hand on that read his bone density. So I would say yes.
Well, that's a good point.
I don't know, man. I just think if you're gonna break that many security oaths, and they can prove that you broke the security, just telling people about this, I feel like would be enough legal ground for an attorney to be like.
I think they just didn't want to fool with it. Just let him go.
Or it would bring attention to them.
Yeah. Or he was so far out already that they couldn't touch him.
Okay, so look. He's telling people there's UFOs. He's taking people that are showing them there are UFOs. If they charge him with violating his security oaths, they place him on the base. They validate his story.
Yeah. That's what I was saying. He's too far out in the open already before him.
But
I just think they don't want to validate it. They want to make him look like a fool.
Couldn't they just say he revealed the top secret program?
Then he's going to have to. Then he's going to say. He and his lawyer say what program and what evidence.
Absolutely,
You gotta have proof.
It's a top secret flight program.
You don't have proof if you don't present evidence. You can't accuse somebody and throw them in Gitmo back then.
I mean,
there was rules, damn it. There was rules, damn it.
Yeah, if there were rules, then why were they kidnapping people off the street, pumping them with LSD, and then throwing them out in the middle of nowhere? There are no rules.
That was a different organization.
If the government wants to put you behind bars, they'll do it, and they'll find any excuse to do so. We've seen it over and over and over again.
Yeah, but I got to tell you, just every story every situation is different, and throwing Bob in jail and convicting him of this validates the story. They want to make him look like an idiot.
Yeah. I think we have to take into consideration the subject matter too. It's a lot easier for them to just be like, the dude's crazy, and most people at the time are going to believe him. Are going to believe them.
I don't want to sound like I'm beating a dead horse in the head, but I have to bring it. The most thought provoking for this for me is if all of this stuff happened and is legitimate, and like I said, I believe it. But if all this stuff happened and is legitimately happening, why is he still contracted to the United States government?
He's a supplier of materials. I mean, they're buying stuff from a vendor.
I got you.
Yeah, they buy stuff from people a lot shadier than him.
Oh yeah,
believe me, yeah.
All right. On that note, I'm going to get you guys to all hold on here as we prepare for our final break of the night on the SOR Roundtable. We got a great panel for all of you. We have Tom Whitmore. We have Lou Jimenez. We have Gary Spikes Jr., John Hudson, Lynn Wallington, and Science Bob McGwier. When we come back, we're going to shift topics, take this one to the top of the hour. What's the difference between an enthusiast and a researcher? Because in the paranormal supernatural world, they seem to be the same when they're not. We'll be back right after this.
Man, you're opening it up tonight.
You really are.
Me?
You know,
What?
no,
What am I
no,
doing?
Dave,
Oh.
topics.
What's that?
I love Sasquatch. One fart and boom. Hits him at 115, flattens the earth.
I'll be right back, guys.
Amazing.
You know, the one thing I will say that I love is that, you know, there was a point, at least for me, that if you believed Bob or not, basically either shut down or opened up your belief that UFOs were real. Like, his story was so important that basically if you got to a stage where you didn't believe Bob's story anymore, you didn't really have any other evidence for UFOs, right? Or even the Travis Walton story. There's been times in history where we've had these stories that are so critical that the whole program lived or died on them. And now we finally reached a point where there's so much data, there's so many stories, there's so much information that Bob could be proved false, Travis could be proved false, several of these people could be fooled, and it's okay. I mean, it would suck for them, and it'd be a bummer. I mean, I think Travis is a really nice guy, but my point is that we don't have these critical point stories anymore where one story, making it or not, ends up derailing the entire process.
No, I mean, look, I again, like my standard of proof is, can I put it in front of a senator? So can I take this Bob Lazar story and put it in front of a senator?
No, you can't. No,
but here's the thing.
And you can't take Travis Walton.
No, you can't take any of those. Unfortunately, you just can't. But here's the thing, is that they do inspire and they do get people to look into the topic. Mm-hmm. So it's a double-edged sword, but I think it's a fun sword to sort of die on. If you're going to die on any sword, whatever. Let's die on the Bob Lazar sword. It'll be fun. It's a fun story. But damn it, man, there's a lot of holes in it. A lot of holes.
It's not useful.
It's just not useful. Yeah, it's just
the Travis story is not useful. The Bob Lazar stories, and as much as I love them, Betty and Barney Hill's not useful. You're not going to take that and convince a senator. We need data and real things we can point to that a senator or congressman can subpoena and get people in front of them, and that's the stuff we have to live and die on. Right. That's the hill we have to die on.
I'm with you.
Now, the story that Travis told, the Benny and Barney Hill story, where those stories are valuable is for the other people who've experienced similar things.
Yes, I agree.
Helping them feel normal, helping them feel that they're not insane.
Totally
That's
agree.
the value of those. I don't know if Lazar falls in that category, but certainly, you know, Travis and Betty and Barney Hill and those other experiencer stories are very valuable for helping people who've experienced that. I
was completely filled with doubt, totally filled with doubt until I spent 4 days with Chris Bledsoe. That ended all my doubts. No more doubts when you see you see that shit with your own eyes. That's it. That's it for me. I saw it with my own eyes. Not Chris's eyes, not Chris's story. These two eyes saw what he sees.
All right, yeah, guys, I'll get quiet the minute I walk back up here.
We're just waiting for that angelic music to come in.
Yeah.
I don't think Rob thinks it's angelic.
My deal with Bob Lazar and even back with Steven, why would you, and I have to say this, I know a lot of people farce a lot of stories and stuff for their own personal gratification, but these folks
out of the studio.
Huh?
I accidentally kicked myself out of the studio.
These guys went through a lot of personal and even financial and a lot of objections. Why would you come out and throw a story and this kind of information out, knowing that if you knew what was going to happen to you?
Yeah.
I mean,
I agree.
Well, I think he thought the alternative was worse.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. In Bob's case,
he did it to try to protect himself. That's the story. Either if you're going to believe the story, you got to believe why he did it.
Very true. We got about 45 seconds, guys.
There was no altruistic point of Bob. He wasn't trying to share information with the world. He was trying to save his butt.
Yep.
Yeah, it was selfish. Save his ass. That's what it was.
Yep.
Hey, I want to say a big thank you to Guillermo, 509er, Bob, Patrick, Carl, Brock, Murray, Jeremy, Andrew, Tim, Filth, Kevin, Gabe, Dave, Justin, and Kat for the amazing super chats tonight. Really do appreciate the love and support of Spaced Out Radio that you guys are giving. Thank you so much. And we're going to get going here in 2 seconds. We've rounded third. We're heading for home tonight on Spaced Out Radio. My name is Dave Scott. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. We really do appreciate earning your listening ears. We want to remind you that if you missed most of this show or others, check out our free archives by going to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do old Davey the favor, hit that subscribe button. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including rocking out to Bumblefoot and reading up on Captain Shirk's SOR Newswire. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show. For the final time tonight, we introduce our panel on the SOR Round Table. We have Lou Jimenez, we have Gary Spikes Jr., Lynn Wallington, John Hudson, Science Bob McGwier, and Tom Whitmore. And we're going to shift topics here right now because one of the big things, whether it's Bigfoot hunting, whether it's ghost hunting, whether it's UFOs, is we have a real line of enthusiasts out there who enjoy these topics. And yet we have a lot of great, brilliant investigators who are trying to bring the information to light no matter what the field is. The difference is there's a lot of confusion in between the two. Now, earlier this week when we did the Angry Ghost Hunter on our YouTube channel, with Ross Allison and his crew. And Ross, in my opinion, is one of the top paranormal researchers in the United States, if not North America. We were discussing the fact that there's a lot of teams out there that really seem to skew what they are doing compared to what they are capable of doing. A lot of teams saying that they are there for scientific evidence, yet nobody on the team has ever done a scientific experiment since leaving high school. Or, you have your team skeptic who always seems to be posing on a photo with their arms crossed and looking up into the sky like they know better than everybody. Then you have the people who are the true researchers out there who are actually trying to find answers to these problems that we're trying to solve. So I'm very confused with it. Gary, we're going to start with you because you're very heavily involved in the Sasquatch world where there is a lot of competition. There's a lot of people running through the forest. We have a lot of people calling this creature a monkey or a great ape, and yet we don't know what it is. You've had a first-hand encounter with this, very up close and personal. What's the difference between an investigator and an enthusiast?
I'm going to take it a step further. This is a very touchy subject for me, as you know, Dave. I say not investigator, but researcher. Strictly theory and how they execute it. If they use true scientific theory and what's the word I'm looking for, Bob? Procedure?
Yeah.
Then they become
scientific method.
Then they are a researcher. When they are just going out, I love how Dave puts it. You're an experiencer. If you use proper scientific method to gain your information, you are a researcher. If you're just going out in the woods and observing in a non-scientific manner where you don't have a control, where you don't have a efficient means to gain the information that you have, you are an experiencer.
I would agree with that. I would agree with that. But to take steps further, Tom Whitmore, you're very heavily involved with MUFON, being on their board of directors, who has hundreds of investigators around North America and the world. You guys take your reports very seriously. And I'm curious for you, as you are training researchers to be researchers and investigators of the phenomena, how do you get your people to keep an open mind?
Well, we have, as everyone knows, we have a training program and training programs. We have a field investigators manual, and we have other training opportunities as well. So if people follow the manual closely and diligently work through their investigations and write the reports, then they should be able to come to something close to a correct conclusion. Now, anytime you have a large group of people, large numbers of people, you end up with a bell curve. At one end, you have very high quality work. At the other end, you have very low quality work, and most people fall somewhere in the middle. So it's human nature, because you have people that are enthusiasts working as investigators. Okay. And because of that, they're going to think they've found a spaceship when they really should be doing more objective kinds of work. At the other end, you have your rock rib conservatives who absolutely demand to have the highest standard of evidence before they're convinced of something. And as for keeping an open mind, I think you have to keep an open mind that it's not going to be what you want it to be. Okay. That's just as important as keeping an open mind to the possibility of extraterrestrial life, et cetera, et cetera.
See, and that's the difficult part, because if I watch the paranormal field, Lynn, I see people, we're going to go investigate Waverly Hills or Gettysburg. And I've always wanted to do this. To me, that's paranormal tourism, that you're going for the thrill. You're not going to solve anything on why bodies are still hanging out at Gettysburg. You're not going to find out why the insane or the nurses or the doctors are still hanging out at Waverly Hills. You're going there as a thrill seeker. And too many times, I think a lot of these teams, groups, individuals try to make themselves a little bit bigger than what they are when it comes to what they are investigating, but more importantly, why they are investigating.
So what's the question? Sorry. There's a lot in there. Okay, so let me address a couple of things. So I would disagree with you about going to the big name places, because part of the scientific method is replicating results. So if they're going there and they're able to replicate results that other people have had before, that is a part of research. Now, if they're going somewhere else and able to replicate similar results, that's also a part of research. And also maybe they just want to go there because they know people get results. And that's okay with me too. So I guess I'm not sure what the issue is with that.
I disagree with you on that part. And I'll tell you why. Because it's great that you want to replicate results, but we all know that paranormal teams or Sasquatch teams or whatever aren't sharing evidence to see what those results are and if they have coincided with other teams. So really, the argument on that is kind of irrelevant.
Not necessarily, because they know that they have results. So, and I think that some of them do share the results. I don't think that everybody is keeping all of the results to themselves. I mean, you can certainly find out results that people have posted and put out there. So, I think if there are certain people who are keeping results to themselves, and I believe you when you say that they are, I think that's unfortunate. I think that's selfish. And I think that they're not adding anything into the conversation.
Right. Science Bob.
Okay, so the problem you're talking about is, I think, most succinctly captured by there are no standards bodies. There's no editorial board. There's nothing. There's no governance at all. And so until we have standards bodies, we have editorial boards with journals, and we have governance, this is just, it doesn't matter whether you're a researcher or not.
Absolutely.
Because you have no one controlling the expression of your work into something that will be useful to the multitude. So I'm just telling you, until we come up with referee journals, science bodies, technical governance, and all that other stuff, it's just never going to be serious.
Mm-hmm. But don't we have to know what's possible in order to have those governing bodies?
You can collect all the observational science data you want, but you're never going to get anywhere with trying to do interpretations that convince other people or set up experiments that can be hypotheses that can be falsified by experiments without bodies.
In the scientific community.
Yes.
No, I agree with you. I agree with you there.
But I mean, every field has been at this stage before it became, you know, authentic, and before it became. So
we had
it's not that people shouldn't be, but it's not that people shouldn't be trying to come up with rigorous methods of investigation. It's not that people shouldn't be attempting to come up with repeatable standards, because when the standards come, some of them are going to be derived from what the best of the best was in that field, right? And so there is definitely value to putting in that effort. But the other challenge is that for each kind of subgenre, there's different criteria that you would set up. You know, I mean, for example, you know, if you're just talking about, you know, someone who researches, you know, some of these people that research documents, who are very document focused, right? You might have a criteria that the difference between someone who is an enthusiast versus someone who is a researcher is someone that you know, has ever produced an original document or has ever written an original hypothesis about the source or the cause of a document. So someone who's actually produced something. You might, you know, in another field, you know, if you're looking at crypto, you might be looking for someone that has brought forward a unique witness to the story, or someone who has personally captured a photograph. But at some level within each genre, the difference between the observers and the actors are you actually producing content? Are you actually making anything that other people want to consume? Is anything you're doing valuable for anyone else to read or look at? And I think once you start producing anything that is of value for other people to look at, that's kind of the point you step up from a hobbyist to a researcher type person, because now you're actually producing something that's valuable to the field.
Here's there's one problem with that. I'm not saying that everybody out there, but in the cryptid community, and I'm saying it, me being one of them for a long time, there has been scientific method written by PhDs and by the community standardizing information gathering. But 85% of the people that are researching are throwing that out the window, not using scientific method and just going and gathering evidence and trying to present it to the scientific community as evidence, and the scientific community will not look at it because they have not collected it correctly. That's the main difference. If we as enthusiasts could up our game and collect that evidence using the proper tools and the scientific method developed by people like Tom, like Science Bob, Dr. Jeffrey Meldrum, Dr. Melba Ketchum, all of them. I know y'all don't agree with a lot of each other, but you all have doctorates. Y'all got these things for a reason. If we up our game and present the evidence as such at the standards that they have set, then they will look at that presented evidence. Until then, you might as well just be throwing it in the closet back here.
But Gary, not only are you right, but I would argue that if you really dive into your world, which I've only done fairly recently, it actually becomes very depressing. Because what you realize is that your field actually has all of the evidence, all of the available processes, all the available paths that every other subgroup is desperately wanting. I mean, if we had the amount of evidence and the amount of procedure and the amount of conceptual ideas that exist in your world, and they existed in the paranormal world, or they existed in there would be significant progress made. But here's the problem. You guys have all that, and still nobody believes. That's frustrating. I mean, that is really
It
frustrating.
goes back to what Bob said. There's no governing bodies.
Mhm.
There's no way to look at this data and confirm or unconfirm. Because here's the thing with Gary: if 85% of the people are turning in bogus information, that means 15% is good information. Science is going to go. I'm not going to try and filter out 15% out of this 85%. We got better shit to do.
That's where we are banging our head in the cryptid community. We are banging our head against a wall. And then you have, I'm sorry, y'all got me on a soapbox here. Then you have these folks that have no education. They're Joe Blow Schmo from out in the middle of nowhere that thinks they're a resident expert on it. And they want to call themselves, for lack of better terms, a citizen scientist or something like that. And to me, it's offensive to guys that have put in hundreds of thousands of dollars and years earning this degree, no matter what the degree is in a higher level education. And these people want to compare themselves or tell the people with these degrees, scientific degrees, that they don't know what they're talking about.
But
that is offensive to me.
But when you're also prejudging what you were looking for, that's where it gets a little bit haywire.
Absolutely.
Okay. So we have people who have seen UFOs in the sky, but they believe everything is a drone these days because drones are red hot for the public to buy. In the Bigfoot world, we have people who are strictly looking for a monkey or an ape, yet we have people like the First Nations communities out there and people who've been on the land for hundreds of years who've watched this creature disappear right in front of them, who say, I don't investigate that. The BFRO is a prime example of that, where the believe it or not, if you don't know this, the Bigfoot Research Organization will actually edit their reports from their investigators. So if let's say Science Bob is an investigator for the BFRO, and he writes a report of an eyewitness who said, we were tracking the Sasquatch, all of a sudden a black triangle flies over top, and these creatures went silent and disappeared. There was no more noise. They were within 10 feet of us, and there was no more noise. They were gone. The BFRO, the minute they see the UFO report inside of that, throws the report away, or they edit the report to close out and get rid of the UFO stuff because it doesn't suit their narrative. And that's part of the problem. They clean it. And that's part of the problem that we have is the research is being edited due to personal belief and not due to the facts that is actually coming out.
Once again, like Bob said, no standards, no governing body.
Well,
I think that happens in science too.
Yeah,
it does. It does.
Well, yeah, because it's the criteria that you have to meet to get something published. It's the difficulty of getting your paper published by a certain group that drives you to a certain quality standard, right? If you have something you really care about that you want to get published, and you know that wherever you're hoping to get this paper published in has this very strict criteria, you work toward that. You actually build your case toward that. So it creates an incentive for people to create better research.
Lynn,
that incentive is lacking.
Lynn, you want to jump in?
No, he said it beautifully.
Okay.
I agree. Yeah.
Power words there for the weekend host, Lynn Wallington. Lou Jimenez.
They hear me talk all the time.
Lou, I know you're more into the UFO stuff, but
yeah.
I mean, we see this absolutely everywhere in these fields, and we can use the fact that there is no rule book, there is no guide, there is no organization that has really grabbed a hold and said, this is the way you do it. But, I'm going to look at you here for a quick second because you're not a scientist. You're much like me. You're an enthusiast. I'm an experiencer and an enthusiast. When I go look for Bigfoot or I go to ghost hunt or something, I don't even care if I have gear. I just want to see and experience something. Mm-hmm. That's all for me. So when people like us look at this from the outside perspective of the scientific model, I mean, is it wrong for us to take our opinion or to support people who are using opinion rather than scientific method?
It's a good question. I would say and this is a lesson that I've had, took me a long time to learn. Control what you can control. Like there's always going to be an element of something you're passionate about that you're really not going to like. And what are you going to do? Like you could get angry and upset about it and waste your energy on that part, or you could take all of that energy and all of that time and dump it into whatever you're working on. I mean, look, I'm an idiot. I'm just a guy who hosts the UAP channel who just wants a little bit more congressional truth, and I want to activate myself politically, and I don't want to talk about any other topic in politics because everything's so divisive and nasty. But with this, I can be political and I can talk about it, and it's fun. It's a fun topic. So here's what I try to do, Dave. I try to take the topic incredibly seriously, but I never take myself seriously. And it makes this whole journey a lot easier to navigate through, because, it's like, as an actor here in Los Angeles, like, I go into audition rooms all the time, and if you're not used to the word no or rejection, you're going to have a really, really tough time in this town. So it's the same thing with researchers versus opinion makers. Like, I'm an opinion person. I read the news, I consume it, and then I talk about it with my buddies on the show, and we try to keep it as factual and grounded as we possibly can. So we're giving good information. But I've never written a paper. I'm not going out in the field and talking to people.
There's nothing wrong with being an experiencer, and
right.
That's where you start, Bob. When you started to get your PhD, you started with a goal in a mind, and you started as a experiencer, and then you focused that and moved on. But when these people, me myself, I'm prime example. 25 years of woodland ape, straight up primate. And then when I had my sighting and seen what it did, it opened my eyes.
And that's a good note where we got to start wrapping things up, everyone. A great final panel to the month of July here on Spaced Out Radio. Gary Spikes Jr., Tom Whitmore, Lynn Wallington, Lou Jimenez, Science Bob McGwier, and John Hudson. Thank you so much for making a very entertaining panel here tonight on Spaced Out Radio. We will do it all again near the end of next month, once again, here on the mighty SOR. What a panel. What a fantastic show. We got Mr. Ron Bumblefoot Thal rocking in the background with Little Brother is Watching. Bumblefoot is the official music of Spaced Out Radio, rocking us in and out of every single show. Get your horns up for the guitar god himself. Special thanks to everybody listening in at home, at work, in your cars, wherever you may be. Thank you to everyone checking us out on YouTube, LGAB, Revolution Radio, Spreaker, Twitch, Facebook, the Space Travelers Club, and on Twitter at hashtag Spaced Out Radio. Remember, this show is copyright by Spaced Out Radio and SOR Media Ventures Limited. Thank you so much for choosing to share your evening with us, because together, my friends, say it with me, we own the night. Mr. Bumblefoot, we need a favor. We need you to take us home. Yes, the Woo train has docked for the night, but soon, my friends, we shall ride again. Your seats are always available. Your tickets never expire. And if you want to bring a friend, we've got room for them too. Good night. Great show, everyone. Thank you so much.
Oh man, that was fun.
Thank you,
Thank you for having me.
Lou, thanks for going the distance with us, man.
Yeah, no worries, no worries.
So, Lou, your closing statement. I would give anything to take that Zen attitude and that open kind of openness and etc. and spread it all over fair number of Dave and I know a scientist in this field. We know him pretty well, and he rants and raves and curses the community constantly, and he never achieves anything by doing it.
Yeah.
Your approach is the right approach, even if you're going to be a scientist. I really appreciate you, Lou.
Hey man, I appreciate you guys. It was a fun conversation, and yeah, that's all we're trying to do. That's all we're trying to do is just bring a little levity, fun, but but also some seriousness to it. It's worthy of it for sure.
Well, Bob, you can have all of that attitude. I want some for the cryptid community.
Oh, it's terrible. It's terrible. I get so pissed off. I really do.
Yeah, well, look, I used to as well. Like when I first started my channel, I was pretty angry, especially like hearing the threat narratives and hearing this and the whole Bob Lazar thing. And, because you go into it, because look, I've had an experience too, right? So it was very difficult for me to compartmentalize my experience away from the conversation. It's so difficult to do that because you always go back to it. But I've like I said, I've learned to just sort of let the water roll off the back and sort of go where the data takes me. And again, I can't take my personal compartmentalized story and put that on the desk of a senator. They're going to say, what the hell do I do with this, buddy? I mean, but it's my story. I saw it. It's viscerally real to me. 10 other people were there. That person's still going to be like, okay. What do I do with this? How do I take this anywhere? And they can't, and it's understandable. Like, so it's hard to put myself in that position or in the shoes of a senator or a congressman, but that's what I always try to do. Always just try and look at it from their perspective. They don't know as much as all of us. Like they just don't. They don't. And so, yeah, we just got to, if we do give them the info, it's got to be the cream of the crop, like the best we got. And
that's why the pilot's talking to them was such a big deal.
Big time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Chad coming out this week was big.
Huge.
It was so big.
Huge. But I mean, look what it did to Dave Beatty. Like
not just Dave Beatty, but more importantly, he sledgehammered Midwest to the floor.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've had a busy week at my daytime job here. What happened?
Well,
Jeremy went on. Jeremy got Chad to come on, and he told the story of making the video and all of the arguments that Mick West put about this is this camera doing this. It's just panning perspective. Chad says, wrong. I was flying the plane level, and the thing took off to the left. I was not in a hard turn. The camera was not turning. It didn't turn at all because it couldn't keep up with something that went from 0 to hypersonic in 1/10 of a second. He totally destroyed Mick West's argument.
There was that, but also that Chad Underwood revealed that the testimonies, the written testimonies that have been circulating around did not come from him.
Did not come from him.
Only about 10% of what he's actually said is quoted correctly in all these things.
Yeah.
In Dave Beatty's film, The Nimitz Encounter, all of it was based off of those quotes. And so he came out publicly today and corrected. He had to correct the film. Basically, his films. I feel bad for the guy, but he was trying to do good work.
The group that has suffered the most with Chad Underwood's public testimony is everything we got from KLS is suspect.
Right.
Everything we got from KLS and Jeremy and George is suspect because Chad Underwood said, that's not me. I never said all that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's going to get interesting. I mean, I
said was actually more impressive than what was in the document.
Oh yeah. I agree.
But by him saying that wasn't me, now that throws shade on that aspect for Dave. Dave's freaking out, thinking, well, now I don't know if anything that I read. Now he does say later on, he goes, now I don't believe that everything in that document's false, I still
Right.
think that most
But
of it's true.
it just
But I
brings
just don't
everything
know
into
which is
question.
which. Right,
Right.
exactly, right. And it just puts everything into question.
Yeah, we have to go back to square one, basically.
Yeah, and the rotten part is
examine what everybody said.
is it
I
Mick
don't
Weston
care.
jumps on it and says,
I
"See, I
don't
was
care.
right."
I don't care that Jeremy and George put that shit out in 2016, 2017, or 2018 because everything that they had in etc. is now worthless. The only stuff that matters is the actual video and the pilot's comments. All their previous stories, flush it and start over.
Yep.
That's amazing.
Hey guys, I think I am going to hit the hay. I'm pooped.
Yeah,
It's
you got
been great.
you got a busy day tomorrow.
It's the
Lynn
witching
Wallace.
hour.
It is. Which in
Oh, wow.
Lynn's life means it's time to sleep.
Yes, I gotta go. I have to go to bed as well. It was fun, you guys.
It was. It was a great time
Absolute
talking
pleasure.
about you
Thanks
guys.
again, Dave, and I'll be in contact for
Yeah,
the
absolutely.
events coming
Whatever.
up.
Yeah, whatever you need from Lynn and I, just let us know, okay?
Yeah,
I
definitely.
will. Absolutely. I appreciate it. And,
Good night, all.
Yeah. Good night. Ciao.
Thank
Night.
you much.
Night.
It was fun.
Good night. Whoever else wants to hang out and play, you can. I'm okay with that. I'm just
Gary,
editing the show.
I cannot even I cannot even I don't even want to think. I don't even want to empathize with the frustration you must feel. I mean, I just a little toe that I've dipped into your world in the last year. I am shocked, absolutely shocked about the amount of data that exists. I mean, it is astounding. Good data. I mean, amazing stuff, right? And varied stuff. I mean, like, and yeah, okay, yeah, maybe it's not always collected in the most proper way, but I mean, when you got guys telling like that whole story about what is that guy Galog
Black, Kevin. Yeah, Kevin.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
That story is insane.
It's one of Duke's. A friend of his, Kevin, actually kind of interacted with a juvenile male Sasquatch. He grew up with him.
Like for 5 years, basically grew up with an orphaned Bigfoot.
Yeah.
No way.
And the story's like touching. It's incredibly touching. The way this, I mean, it's like it break your heart listening to it.
But once again, the way it's presented, all credibility is thrown out the window. That's what drives me nuts with my community is the elements and the method is there to collect this evidence. You don't know how many scientists I've talked to working with the people that I do that just won't even like, I bring them some audio, some that you cannot mess with. Phenomenal. And they're like, we won't touch it because it's got this, it's like Bigfoot or cryptid is a taboo subject. And I'm
and so Dave, just imagine if someone showed up with clear audio of an alien talking, what kind of impact that would have. And we have that in the Bigfoot field and no one cares.
Tom, I know you said it was fixing to say something. What was yours?
Well, I just think, Gary, there are a couple of disciplines it seems like that people that want to be in that field could come out of. One is wildlife biology and the other is ecology. And maybe you have a lot of these enthusiasts out there that aren't from any of those type of backgrounds.
Gary, question for you from Excalibur. Have there been any Bigfoot sightings in Oklahoma, and have you looked into the spook lights out in Eastern OK?
Oklahoma right now is like ranked number in the past 3 years of the number of sightings is like number 3 in the nation outside of Washington. And I think Texas is up there. Now it's Oklahoma. And the spook lights, my actual Eastern, I would call it headquarters, where Dave always chases me because I'm always out there in the woods and I can't get my emails and stuff back and forth, are about 20 miles from the spook lights. And we have experienced those and I've got them on film. I just haven't presented them yet.
Well, get your ass.
So are they like the orbs that Chris Bledsoe sees?
They're real similar to the ones that comes out of Kentucky and Tennessee, but it's down a road and they'll literally follow you and then they'll shoot straight up in the air. And the ones that I did seen, and then they flashed when they got in the air. But
what's really funny about that is I have this good friend that grew up near the Ozarks, and and he's a really cool guy because he's got a PhD in mathematics, but he's the first person in his family to ever get a degree. Most of his family, they're all like coal, right? And he grew up in there, and he told me that when he was a kid, that like if you walked home late at night, that sometimes these orbs would appear, and they'd start following you home, and everyone knew not to look at them, not to pay them any attention. Because if you gave them any attention, they would mess with you and they would follow you all the way to home. If you just ignore them, they would go away. And he told me this happened all the time, and it was totally normal. I was flabbergasted. I was like, "What are you talking about?" And he's like, "Oh yeah, man, everyone knows about that." And I was like, I was blown away.
I kind of want to get back to what we was talking about with the what I've noticed shortly in when I say shortly, over a period of probably 10 years with the UFO community, there seems to be a lot more open-mindedness about the science behind it. Tom, you was actually mentioning about the two disciplines. There seems to be a lot more open-mindedness and a lot more, and I hate to say this, and please folks don't take me wrong when I say this, but there seems to be a lot more highly educated people with degrees chasing UFOs than there are chasing cryptids. I mean, we have late great John, God rest his soul, Dr. John Bindernagel. We got Dr. Jeffrey Meldrum. We got Dr. Mel Bekevchin. We've got a list, but it's not near as long and as adverse as the UFO community. And my goal with this is to get some of you scientific minds from the UFO community to make a crossover to maybe help us.
I think Gary, I think people are trying. David Weatherly, Timothy Renner,
yes,
Joshua Cutchin,
yes,
David Spinks,
yes,
Jody Cook from the Dogman Project. Oh, yeah. I think there are a number of people trying to get that crossover, but for everyone like that, there's idiots out there saying, "I'm going monkey hunting this weekend,"
or like when I started with you, "I'm going squatching." That's just a slang term, but it does drop the standard.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, and also I think there's been so many times where we thought we were close. Like, what's going on with DNA? Like every once in a while, I start hearing about there being some real serious progress in DNA, and then it just vanishes. And I don't like. Is there any progress being made on sequencing any of the hair or anything?
Yes and no. Every roadblock that I've seen, they say it's been contaminated because it has, and I'm not an expert on it. Believe you me, right. There's a lot of people out there that's a lot more expert.
I just need, give me 2 seconds here, guys. I just need to find Jimenez saying bullshit or shit here.
Huh?
He's looking for a swear word.
I'm at a loss.
So every night, Dave, if anyone swears during the show, he has to go through the recording and edit out the swear words.
There's John. There it is. 1 second. I think that's it. Hold on. All right, guys. Thank you. Sorry.
Well, Gary, I think part of the problem is your situation is similar to UFOs in that with UFOs, you don't know when you're going to see one, how you're going to see one, why you're going to see one. You know, you can't just set up a lawn chair and a table and a pair of binoculars and know that you're going to see a UFO at 3 p.m. on Thursday, you know, and then collect information.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing with Bigfoot. I mean, or something like that. You know, if you want to study lions or elephants or whatever, you can go to a certain place and collect data. And you can't do that in these fields. And so, you know, I think that's one of the reasons why a lot of scientists don't want to get involved, because I think they probably think they're just going to waste their time.
Yeah.
But Tom, how it doesn't help field credibility, though, if you have organizations like BFRO who are sitting there scrubbing evidence to fit their narrative, or you get paranormal teams out there who are, you know, faking evidence or scrubbing their own evidence because there's a UFO involved.
Or even more rudimentary than that, there is not a standardized questionnaire. People are forgetting some of the most important questions that you'd ask in the paranormal community. One of the standard questions is, have you got a history of drug or alcohol or mental issues? You say that in the cryptid community and they want to poke you in the nose.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
We need a standardized format. And then once again, once you get that, Dave, I'm sorry, you got me on a soapbox. If you get a standardized format that everybody collects the same amount of evidence, it's going to make it harder for these organizations to scrub it because they don't have as much control over it.
Dave, I'm sure that's frustrating. I don't know what to say. I mean, I think it happens in science too, like I said before, and I think it happens in government. You know, the higher ups want a certain answer, and if you don't provide the answer they want, then they, you know, take the information out or whatever.
Tom, you being I apologize if I'm putting you on the spot here, because I am honestly not trying to do so. Okay, but if you heard of MUFON investigators scrubbing reports because somebody who reports let's say a black triangle while they're in the forest, and all of a sudden they start getting Bigfoot activity around that, and that Bigfoot activity gets scrubbed from the report because it either A, has nothing to do with UFOs, even though it's a big part of the experience, is that something credible for a group of yours to do, or any group to do, if you're scrubbing part of the story?
No, I agree with you. And historically, I mean, you can go back to the 50s and 60s, and there were some UFO people that were pretty serious investigators, and they didn't want to think that that the UFOs could be occupied by humanoid beings. But, you know, they got through that. And then we got into the 80s and the 90s, and Bob Bigelow wanted to fund UFO research, you know, through MUFON and the other organizations at the time, CUFOS and the Fund for UFO Research. But Bigelow wanted to get into cattle mutilations and crop circles and things like that. And the guys I know in the UFO field were pretty conservative about things like that. They didn't want to get into that. So, you know, I think the same principle applies, that if they'd gotten a report of a crop circle and a UFO, then maybe they wouldn't have reported it. You know what I mean? So I think there's kind of an evolution of acceptance of certain things. Like I know a lot of abductees have reported paranormal type activity as well, you know, poltergeist type activity. And I think for people that are open-minded enough about abductions to take a look at it, they accept that now, you know, that there's poltergeist type activity. We don't know what the heck it means.
True. But for those who are multiple experiencers like I am, it usually starts off with one part of the phenomena, and then it literally comes around, and you get everything. Like for me, it started with paranormal stuff, and then it went to Sasquatch, and then it went to UFOs and aliens. And
is that really weird though? Or is that more normal and people just don't admit to it?
I don't think it happens to everybody, but I think there are certain people that are chosen, and I use that word lightly, chosen, that are given multiple experiences or open up to the fact of multiple experiences, and then you end up like being a Kmart blue light special that everything rushes to you.
Fair enough. Now I got a different question though, real quick. Is it? I mean, so for those of you that do like Bigfoot type research, especially for those of you who've actually seen one, there has to be inside of you a certain amount of, and tell me if I'm wrong, but a certain amount of real love and admiration for that creature and for that community of individuals. Is it really in the best interest of that community to become public? Is it really in the best interest of that community to become accepted by everyone?
You could say that about the UFO community too.
Uh-huh.
Right?
Well, as far as I'm concerned, if there are really like space people with spaceships, they can probably defend themselves.
Okay.
I'm more worried about lovely creatures in the forest that might suddenly become inundated with tourism and what else could happen, right?
Have you heard about the Bigfoot bounty here in Oklahoma?
Exactly. Perfect example.
Okay. This is a hot topic for us. My personal opinion on the matter is I hear people say they've been protecting themselves forever. Well, realistically, yes, but we do need to get a species recognized, and we do need conservation efforts, in my personal opinion. I believe we need to get them recognized. That way, whether they are human, it leads back to the DNA. The reason we have human DNA in them is they could be human, a human hybrid. We don't know.
Humanish. Yeah.
Yes. But I truly believe they need to be protected. But one thing,
because I know that would happen eventually. I guess what I'm worried about is how much of a time gap would there be between a large amount of the population accepting them as real, and then whenever that legislation would get developed and written and enforced and put into play, would you end up with 1, 2, 3, 5, 10 years that could be honestly absolute hell for that community?
Let's use the mountain apes in Africa as an example. That happened at the turn of the century. So, and It took, I think, like 20 years to get a full recognition, and they was almost like Bigfoot. But I honestly believe that with today's technology, with the internet and the news media and the way things are accelerated, in my personal opinion, just a theory, and I'm just shooting out my, just blowing out my nose pretty much. You're probably looking at maybe a year, just enough to get the legislation. Once the scientific community picks it up and recognizes them because there's already acts in Congress in different states and countries, and Canada especially, British Columbia is one of them, that actually they've got laws protecting these guys.
Okay. All right. Okay. That's something.
If we can get it actually recognized in the scientific community, and that rolls us full circle to what Dave started in and what Tom started in, is if we can get it recognized in the scientific community, I think it'll happen within a year or two. But the point that I wanted to get at is it's almost like the UFO community is like 10 years advanced of the cryptid community. Y'all have got the scientific means, you got scientific minds working, you got scientific theories, because now we're getting disclosure. What can we? Well, I know that's up in the air, but supposedly getting disclosure. What can we take from that experience and unilaterally bring over to the cryptid community and maybe change a few things to get excelled in the cryptid community like that we have in the UFO community?
Well, a lot more
You
people
have to
have
get
seen
the DOD
UFOs
to think
than have seen Bigfoot.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Very
true.
cool.
I mean, but part of the main difference is just that there's no strategic military advantage to understanding Bigfoot, right? So there's a lot more government resources being applied to UFOs. But the other thing I find very interesting is that when you talk about UFO type stuff, whatever it is, it's reaching out to us. It's coming to us. It's contacting us. It's making itself visible to us. It's interfering with our lives. It's a very, very obvious that that whatever it is, it has intent to interact with us.
Yes.
Whereas my impression, and I know very little about, my impression about the Bigfoot world is that's not true there. When we see them, it's an accident, or it's because they're curious, but they don't have any need to contact us. There's nothing they want from us.
Generally, that's the case. I mean, there are a few set cases, and I'm still kind of up in the air. I'm not a resident expert on none of this. I mean, I've just got my personal experiences and what I've collected. But there are people that has these target species reaching out and communicating with them via mind speak, via habituation and stuff.
But isn't it more on a isn't that more on a per relationship basis? It's not that they need anything.
Yeah,
it's not like they're coming to the humans and saying we need something from you.
No,
right?
No, and
they don't need anything from us.
It's not across the species either. It's not across like with UFOs. It's like there's more of an interaction there. But I like what Tom said. There is a lot more reports of UFOs than there are of the cryptid world. I honestly think that the cryptid world is just a little bit behind the UFO side of things.
From one aspect, but from the evidence aspect, you guys have a bunch of the stuff that we desperately want on the UFO side. I mean, the amount of recordings, the amount of photographs, the amount of film, the amount of it's just, and then all the BS that's spread about those items. I mean, I honestly, man, until like 6 months ago, for the last 20 years, I honestly thought that the Gimlin-Patterson film was proven fake. That's what was the common knowledge in my area. I found out like 6 months ago from Dave, or a year ago, that film actually, I mean, you can't prove it, but it hasn't been disproved. It actually there's actually been a lot of work to try, and they failed. That film stands strong, and now it's been redone in 100.
All about tits.
And now it's in beautiful 100 frames per second 4K. Have you guys seen that? How they put the film through a machine learning? It looks amazing.
I've got it right
here. If we had that film of an alien, can you imagine?
Yeah. Well, you got Skinny Bob.
Well, yeah.
Do you buy the Skinny Bob video?
I'm sorry,
Tom. Do you buy the Skinny Bob video?
I neither confirm nor deny. I don't have an opinion because I don't. In the first place, I'm not qualified to pass judgment on it from a technical standpoint. And I just try to keep an open mind. Maybe maybe there's something to it. Maybe it's fake. If it's fake, if it's a fraud, I think they did a pretty good job.
So you're talking about the one with the guy in the beard who's talking like with his voice masked, and he's kind of narrating the interview of the alien, and the alien's like coughing, and like medics come in to take care of it. Is that the one you're talking about?
No, this is more like there was a crash and there was this little alien walking around afterwards.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
But there's another video of an alien. The picture is very dark, and the alien is obviously in some kind of distress.
Yeah, one. I don't like that video. That video bothers me. Like it's hard to watch that video. Like that guy's suffering, or at least doing a damn good job of pretending to suffer. It's not pleasant to watch that.
Yeah.
Which one is that?
What's that one called?
You can find it on the internet. I don't know.
It was basically it was it came out like on Fox TV or something like that. It was like a news broadcast where this guy who was masking his voice, he had a beard, and he was basically narrating it, and he kept like threatening to leave the interview because the guy was asking like rough questions, and they keep showing this video of this alien being interviewed and being treated and it's very dark, and it's very dim, and it's very upsetting. I don't like it. It's not pleasant at all. I thought that was I'm getting that confused with the Skinny Bob one. So is Skinny Bob a film, or is it just a picture?
I'm sorry.
It's a film. It's a video.
Skinny Bob is a film. Oh.
I'm trying to see if I can find it for you, Dave.
Appreciate that.
Let's see.
Well, while we're being quiet, I want to say something. The response that Tom
Okay, I'm going to send you a link, Dave.
Okay, cool.
Gave just a while ago is what I personally strive for. And I personally like to see is I am not qualified to answer that question specifically.
That's our Tom.
Yeah.
Right there.
More people should be comfortable saying that.
I tell people all the time, I don't know. I do not know.
Yeah, there's no it drives me nuts when people like no one should feel. I mean, being wrong and being ignorant are two things that no one should be ashamed of. You know,
that's very easy to be wrong in this field. Let me tell you.
Prime example right here, John. I know you're in the UFO field. Tom, how old is MUFON?
Goes back to basically back to 1970.
When did y'all start getting a standardized initial report format?
Pretty early in the game, because there were examples from the Air Force. The Air Force had questionnaires that were used. But the field investigator manual has gone through several iterations, and we've been at it a long time. It's I'll tell you one way you can learn a lot about how scientific investigation is done is the Condon report. Mm-hmm. And people don't like that because they don't come to the conclusion that UFOs are a real issue. But there are lots of examples in there of how scientists would go about, investigating UFO situations. Another person that was a real honest to God scientific investigator was James McDonald, mm-hmm. Dr. James McDonald.
Mm-hmm. My whole point with that is y'all started that early on in our community. Each group, each person, each little group, each BFRO at one time had a pretty standardized report, but then you've got to be a paid member of their group to get this information. So in our community, it's so chaotic. There is no standard format of investigation. I myself use a direct questionnaire document from a police or OSBI, Oklahoma State Bureau of Investigation report that gives me a basic baseline. But I think it would be so beneficial to our community is if we could band together and do like y'all have done and have a standardized report and a standardized database to where people could openly come. And that's where Dave, I love how he says that, people squelching the information. If we could have that, MUFON has got a great database. There's 3 major databases in the UFO community, correct, Dave?
Oh, there's many. There's a lot.
But Gary, isn't there already established process for when other creatures have been investigated, like when like the discovery of like the panda, and there's obviously like
that. That's what if we took the biological studies, the scientific biological studies of, say, the red panda, the white panda, the format is there, but nobody wants to apply it. So the scientific community is saying we have this standardized format. Go get it.
But it's boring. It's boring and it's monotonous. It's real science.
That's my whole point. Is these scientists that I've talked to say, if you'll go get this report and present it to us as such, we'll take a look at it.
Right.
We're not going to look at your handwritten report from Texas Bob McAfee from down on the Red River that was drinking a beer in his underwear. They're not going to listen to that. We need to take a standardized report. And that's where I think and me and Dave's talked about this a lot, and Dave's been such a extreme help with me and my, research, is being able to make this crossover, being able to do shows like this and get the word out there that the information is there. You just have to go get the right format and clip.
Well, I recommend that you try to pair up with some other qualified, serious investigators, and develop your develop your technique there, and then recruit certain people in key areas, that might be able to do investigations. But I'll tell you one thing I kind of disagree with MUFON on is I'd rather have 5 really truly top flight investigators than 50 mediocre ones.
Yeah.
So I'd be selective in recruiting investigators.
It's being done in our community. Dave mentioned Jody Cook. I don't work with Jody directly. I work with Nick Vellante. He's one of my best friends. One of Jody Cook's guys. We do have guys in the community that are doing this. We've just got to get the general consensus and the general population over to doing it.
Gary, is it your opinion that the wrong data has been collected, or that the right data has been collected, it's just not being presented in the right format?
That's my exact area right there.
Okay, if that's the case, then once you've worked with people to figure out what your right method should be, there is a way. There are kits out there for creating machine learning algorithms that will essentially go through your existing reports in their mismatched content form. Absolutely. And basically strip out of them what you need, and then produce reports in the method that you want. You'd have to get there. I mean, it would take a while to get there, but that would be a way of reclaiming all that work and making sure that not all of it's lost because it wasn't done in the right format.
We are working on that now. Duke from World Bigfoot Radio said, perfect example. He said there's already such a group, the North American Sasquatchers Alliance, but they are a secret group. That's secret. Science is not secret. Science is for the benefit.
Not good science, anyway.
Yes, it's for the benefits of the species, the benefit of the community, and that's where I'm trying to get away from.
Listen, guys, I'm going to call it a night.
Actually, I got a jet too, but man, it was a pleasure. And I got to tell you, Tom, it was an honor to do this with you, man. I so much respect for what you've done. You're such a nice guy and you do such good work. And it was really nice to get to talk to you. And hopefully I get to do it again at a time zone where, it's not so rough on you, but I really appreciate it. It was a lot of fun. And Gary, it's super fun. And Dave, thank you so much for inviting me onto this. I had a blast.
No problem, buddy. We appreciate you coming on in. We really
Thank you, John. It's great talking with you. And Gary, it's great to meet you. I'd like to talk to you some more.
I was just fixing to throw that at you. I would like to reach out to you if you've got some time and get a little bit of your theory. I love theory. You can ask Dave. I will sit for hours and listen to technical theory. I can't even talk. I'm tired. Techniques and theory. I'm keen on it. Very analytical.
Cool. And Dave, I sent you a link on that alien video.
Yeah, I'll check it out. I'll check it out here. I'm just quickly doing the website here because I'm going away tomorrow for a couple of days, and it's either stay up a little bit later right now and do the website or
sure,
don't have it done until Monday. So I'll look at it afterwards.
Okay, well, thanks for having me on the show, Dave. Good
Tom,
night.
it's always a pleasure. You're a mentor of mine, so thank you.
Okay, good night.
Good night. How are you, Gare? Then it was just you and me.
Yeah, I'll talk to you here privately. I want to address something. That's twice. Duke, good thing the Alliance doesn't give I'm not going to say the word, about no towing to the agenda-driven retards of science. Could you clarify on that? And aren't stupid enough to be. This might be a private conversation.
Yeah, take that one off air.
Yeah.
Take that one off air. Hold on. You know how Herodotus 2,000 years ago said reptilians are from Sirius B and brought us cannabis? No, I didn't know that. And then, Tony, I thought Dr. Mel McKetchum had done and presented the scientific evidence properly.
I have heard her, and like I said, I'm by far not an expert on any of it because I don't know anything about DNA. But she presented her evidence. Another scientist came and presented a rebuttal against her evidence. That's how the scientific community works, is you present your evidence in a certain way, they present their evidence in a certain way, and the community decides on it. That's what scientific community is. Before you go, Gary, could you say what part of Oklahoma has the most Sasquatch sightings? In my personal experience, I would say southeastern Oklahoma, down in the Kiamishi Mountains. I mean, they're all over Oklahoma, but per capita and per, I've even my personal experiences, I've had more of them in southeastern Oklahoma, where I'm originally from, than I have anywhere else in Oklahoma.
Right on. Right on. All right, we're going to end this show here on our YouTube channel tonight. And thank you so much to everybody who donated to the Super Chat tonight. Apollo, Guillermo, 509er, Bob, Patrick, Carl, Brock, Murray, Jeremy, Andrew, Tim, Filth, Kevin, Gabe, Dave, Justin, and Cat Chaser. We really appreciate it. Lynn Wallington is here for Saturday and Sunday night. Tomorrow night she'll have John Hudson on the show, and then on Sunday Preston Dennett. So it is a full on UFO weekend with Lynn Wallington, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern for 2 hours, and we're going to have a lot of fun with that coming on up here. So stay tuned. We got great radio coming up. I will see you guys all on Monday. Jason Guimet will be my guest. He is a Canadian MUFON researcher, and he hosts a great podcast called the UAP Studies Podcast, and we'll get to some UFOs on him. Thank you so much for everybody tuning in. Really appreciate you. Enjoy your weekend, and good night.